Chapter 726. With a whoosh, the phantom involuntarily entered the tribulation space like a moth to a flame. Chu Yang followed with a smile on his face. After a long time, Chu Yang felt as if his body was about to explode. It was as if every strand of hair on his body was in a state of drinking the blood of a lust dragon. It was very high. After a not-so-arduous battle, the phantom was completely swallowed by Chu Yang. This was at least 80,000 years old. Not only did Chu Yang's damaged spirit recover, but it was also dozens of times more. Chu Yang was almost bursting at the seams with such a huge compensation. With his current spirit power, he couldn't completely digest it. This was like a person who could only eat 2 steamed buns for a meal, but ate 20 steamed buns for a meal. Chu Yang was filled with a sense of fullness. He even felt lazy and didn't want to do anything. Even if he blinked, he felt that it was unnecessary. Forcing his spirit to immerse in the soul-tempering pool, Chu Yang closed his eyes. After a long time, Chu Yang only felt that the inside of his spirit seemed to be shaking constantly, and there was a constant roaring sound, followed by flashes of lightning and roars of thunder. Finally, there was a loud tremor. Outside, Chu Yang's body, which was sitting cross-legged on the ground, shook violently, and blood spurted out of all the pores on his body. And in the tribulation space, Chu Yang's face finally showed a relaxed smile. This strong tremor woke up the sword spirit who had fallen into a deep sleep. The sword spirit was obviously extremely weak, and he was barely able to support himself to get up. Looking at the soul-tempering pool, he saw Chu Yang's spirit, which was almost solid, soaking peacefully in it. The sword spirit trembled and gasped. His whole body trembled and his eyes were wide open. After a long time he moaned, "Oh my God, what's going on?" The sword spirit stared blankly. "Isn't this little one's spirit damaged? Why is his spirit almost as strong as mine now?" Chu Yang opened his eyes lazily. "You're awake?" "I'm awake." The sword spirit unconsciously repeated these words. Then he rushed forward like an arrow. "What the hell is going on?" Chu Yang spread out his hands. I swallowed the guardian here. Is that simple? Is that simple? The sword spirit took 2 steps back in a daze. "You swallowed the guardian. You. He suddenly gritted his teeth and gave a thumbs up. "You're awesome." Then he sat down in the tribulation space. He was so stunned that he didn't say anything. So, that illusion could be devoured? But why didn't the previous 8 generations of Calamity Sword Masters? What was going on? No wonder Chu Yang's divine soul was completely healed. So that was the case. If that's the case, then you're very lucky. The sword spirit woke up after a long while and sighed again and again. He didn't know if he was envious or jealous of this guy's good luck. "I think so too." Chu Yang frowned. "It's just that I only feel very full now. I don't feel any other function." "You still want to obtain other benefits? Dream on." The sword spirit was speechless and despised him. "You just devoured him. Replenishing his divine soul was already the greatest benefit. What's more, you don't have the ability to digest this energy now. What can you get? You have to cultivate step by step to strengthen your divine soul, and then slowly digest this powerful divine soul power. Extract some experience and memories from it, then turn them into your own." The sword spirit snorted. "But you have to be careful. This divine soul power has lost its own consciousness and turned into pure divine soul power of heaven and earth. But this energy is still not something you can bear now. You've just swallowed it and its backlash hasn't come yet." "Backlash?" Chu Yang was stunned. "Of course it's backlash. Do you think that you won't have to pay a price or work hard to get such great benefits out of thin air?" The sword spirit looked at him strangely. "It's like a free lunch falling from the sky? Is that so?" Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "What will happen if I suffer a backlash?" "I don't know." The sword spirit shook his head. "But if your divine thoughts are unstable, it won't be a problem for it to be scattered by him. Even if it shatters your divine thoughts in one go. I won't be surprised." Chu Yang was shocked. "But if you can hold on, and you can completely digest it and turn it into your own divine soul power, then from then on your divine soul will be eternally stable." The sword spirit looked at Chu Yang enviously. Eternally stable divine soul. Chu Yang was deep in thought. "After talking for so long, you still haven't told me who that guardian is?" The sword spirit asked curiously. "Don't you know him?" Chu Yang widened his eyes strangely. "I should know him?" The sword spirit also widened his eyes strangely. Suddenly he exclaimed, "You mean?" Chu Yang looked at him quietly. "You mean, he's one of the past tribulation sword masters?" The sword spirit looked at Chu Yang in disbelief and suddenly shook his head. No, no. He's been there since the second generation. So, he's the first tribulation sword master. Smart. Chu Yang praised him. The sword spirit's body shook and he looked like he was going to faint. For 10,000 years I've never felt what it means to collapse. The sword spirit murmured, today I finally feel it. Chu Yang was surprised. Other than eternally stable divine soul, what other benefits are there? Chu Yang asked. Other benefits, you'll know in the future. The sword spirit was a little jealous and a little sad. He looked at Chu Yang speechlessly. You go and experience it yourself. I'm going to continue sleeping. Sigh, why did I sleep at such a bad time? The sword spirit looked up at the sky and sighed. If only I was still here when you devoured him. How good would that be? I could also have a share of the benefits and you wouldn't have to suffer too much backlash. The sword spirit sighed as if he resented the heavens for being blind. The sword spirit walked to the side of his soul-quenching pool shakily and dived in. Chu Yang snorted and rolled his eyes. He said in his heart, you wish? Then he felt his vision blur and he was already out of the mental space. The water around him gurgled and wrapped around Chu Yang's body. In front of him was a cave entrance that was shining with white light. Chu Yang's eyes widened. He was actually out of the illusion and back to the time before he fell into the illusion. Outside the mysterious cave entrance. His left foot was stepping into the cave entrance. The inside was shining with white light. It seemed to be filled with endless mystery. Chu Yang took a deep breath and checked his body. Only then did he realize that there were no wounds on his body at all. In the illusion he remembered that he had stabbed himself with thousands of swords. It turned out that it was all fake. Chu Yang looked at the cave entrance that was filled with a warm aura, and his heart still had lingering fear. Previously, GMO Gu Duxing and the other brothers died in front of him one by one. His parents died tragically, and the scene of Mo Qingwu's death seemed to still be in front of his eyes. Although he knew that it was fake. Although he knew that he had passed this stage, Chu Yang still had goosebumps all over his body. It was too scary. Such an illusion was simply heart-wrenching. Even if it was an illusion, Chu Yang didn't want to experience it again. The sword point, sword edge, and sword edge of the Calamity sword danced in front of him, excitedly urging Chu Yang to go inside. Inside there was a sword intent that was chanting intensely. It was like a baby waiting to be fed, calling for the arrival of its mother. It was full of desire. But Chu Yang hesitated and looked at the cave entrance, full of fear. Countless times he wanted to turn around and leave. At this moment the fearless king of Hell Chu was really afraid. He was afraid that after going in he would experience such a blow again. His eyes flickered. But finally, his left foot took a step forward. The step he took was filled with unyielding resolve. Even Chu Yang himself had a heroic feeling of a warrior who would never return. But after entering, there was nothing. Other than the transparent water flowing slowly, everything was calm and without waves. Chu Yang raised all of his spiritual power and cautiously walked forward step by step. He didn't encounter anything. He also knew that that kind of tragic illusion would never appear again. But he was still vigilant. There was a blazing white light in front of him and a bright thing was jumping. The sword point, sword edge, and sword edge of the Calamity sword whistled at the same time. But Chu Yang didn't say anything and didn't express his permission. The sword point, sword edge, and sword edge of the Calamity sword didn't dare to be presumptuous. The white light in front of him jumped more and more intensely, gradually turning into a mass of thick white light, with a strict aura as if it was impregnable. It seemed that no matter what kind of attack in front of this white light, it could only be blocked. This was the strongest defense between heaven and earth. Chu Yang's heart moved, sword guard. Walking in front of that mass of white light, with every step Chu Yang took, that mass of white light shrank a little. With another step it shrank a little more. He took 7 steps forward. The white light disappeared without a trace. In front of Chu Yang, a small white jade stone platform appeared. On the stone platform, a broken sword quietly stayed on it, obediently and motionlessly. This was a handguard. The wild goose pond had a double opening. The shape was beautiful, simple and generous. One could imagine that when this handguard was installed on the body of the sword and stuck close to the hilt, it would be able to protect the hand holding the sword to the greatest extent. It would not allow the hand holding the sword to receive any damage. Chu Yang's heart moved, and the sword guard quietly floated up, emitting a faint white light. The white light emitted a strong feeling of joy. You came. Chu Yang said quietly. The sword guard flipped in the air happily, then turned into a thin white light, and went straight into Chu Yang's dantian. The sword point, sword edge and sword blade went in happily. In his dantian, the illusory tribulation sword shone brightly. The sword point, sword edge, sword blade, and sword guard all became solid at the same time. Chu Yang clearly heard it clang in his mind. The light of the tribulation sword faded, and it returned to its original state. And a passage of words like lake water entered Chu Yang's mind. There seemed to be an illusory figure holding the tribulation sword dancing in the air. This was the 4 moves of the tribulation sword technique. These 4 moves belonged to the sword guard. Chu Yang looked at it with rapt attention and read it out softly. Iron walls and copper walls have never stopped fighting. What more can I ask for in this life? Clouds and clouds gather. As long as I am alive, you will have no worries. Sword guard protect. The 4th fragment of the tribulation sword was in his hands. Chapter 727. Chu Yang tried to figure it out. He had learned these 4 sword techniques in his previous life. In his previous life he had also obtained the 4th fragment of the calamity sword here. However, there were no illusions or divine souls. It was just a broken sword, and there were 4 sword techniques engraved on the broken sword. In this life, there were no engravings on the broken sword. It was a divine soul imprint. It was completely different. Even the sword techniques were different. This difference made Chu Yang almost think that his previous life was just a dream. Chu Yang remembered very clearly that these 4 techniques in his previous life were purely for defense. However, the 4 techniques that were appearing in front of him were not just for defense. It was true that the sword guard was mainly for defense. However, defense was not necessarily defense. One had to know that killing all the enemies was also a form of defense. The strongest defense was offense, and the strongest defense was to kill all the threatening enemies in the germinal organization. The Iron Wall and Bronze Wall were still fighting. This sentence was one for defense and one for offense. The Iron Wall and Bronze Wall were naturally a flawless defense. First, the Iron Wall and then the Bronze Wall were 2 types of defense. The Iron Wall protected itself, and the Bronze Wall was already showing its fangs ready to counterattack. The battle was not over, but it expressed a fierce fighting spirit. You want to stop, but I don't. You want to leave after attacking me? No way. The battle was fierce. Therefore, this was a move that was both offensive and defensive. One move with 3 changes from defense to offense. It was flawless. The attack was like the wrath of thunder, and the defense was like the blue light of the sea. The second move, what more could one ask for in this life? This move, looking at the name of the move, seemed to be a question. However, it was actually a kind of affirmation. The affirmation was that, with the protection of the sword guard, there was no need for any defense in this life. Moreover, this was a pure killing move. The whole move was like a huge question mark between heaven and earth. Who could break the firmament? The firmament naturally contained endless arrogance and domineering. The firmament gathering. This move looked like a storm, but this move was purely for defense. Since the firmament gathering was here, there were enemies on all sides, and there were ambushes from all directions. In such a situation, it was even more important to defend impenetrably. However, when I was still alive, Jianghu had no worries. This move was filled with iron and blood looking down on the world. This was a desperate move. As long as he used this move, he would be risking his life. Chu Yang silently watched, silently pondered, and silently experienced. So far, he had obtained a total of 10 moves of the Calamity Sword art. Sword tip. A single ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? A sharp will buried deep does not change. Gather the wind and clouds to become the emperor. Sword edge. A sword that had been famous for thousands of years. Moving unhindered from the west to the east. The sun and the moon were the generals of the thunder. The sky was blood red. Blade. A blade across the sky for 10,000 autumns. This road leads to the netherworld, cut off the passerby of the mortal world. Wherever the tip of the spear passed, everything would cease. Sword case. The iron wall and copper wall were still fighting. What else could he ask for in this life? The clouds gathered together. Don't worry while I'm still alive. Plus the 4 moves that Chu Yang had created himself. The skeleton in his palm was as tall as a mountain. Under the sword, a pool of blood surged like waves. The world of mortals was originally a path of ruthlessness, beheading the world without retracting the blade. Right now, Chu Yang had a total of 20 sword moves in his hands. But the most powerful ones were undoubtedly still the 10 moves of the Calamity Sword art. Chu Yang realized that he had gained a different understanding of the first 12 moves after he had obtained the 4th sword guard and the sword technique had been linked together. From the first section to the fourth section, there were a total of 30 moves in the Calamity Sword art. It seemed that it was a complete set. Every time he added a section, the power of the sword art would also be enhanced. Chuyang couldn't help but think, when the tribulation is gathered, how terrifying would the power of this set of sword art be? That was something that he didn't even dare to think about. The 4 moves that he had created also seemed to be very powerful. But it was undeniable that as the sections of the Calamity Sword were gathered, his 4 moves were really a little inferior. They still needed to be perfected. Chuyang praised, "The wisdom of the predecessors is unimaginable. I still need to work harder." Finally, the Calamity Space was silent. Chuyang stretched out his hand, and the Calamity Sword quietly appeared in his hand, flashing with a cold light. Chuyang held the sword and danced. The first move, the second move. When it came to the third move, Chuyang realized that with his current cultivation, he still couldn't activate the power of this move. Clouds and clouds gathered together. The imaginary enemy of this move seemed to be enemies from all directions, from the heavens to the earth. And this move still had to be impenetrable, without any flaws, to ensure that his body wouldn't be hurt at all. The complexity and precision of this move was almost close to an inescapable net. As for the fourth move, "You shall not worry before I die," it was an extreme move that risked his life. The desperation of putting one's life on the line, as well as a kind of hostility that could be felt just by looking at the sword move. Chuyang felt that the power of this move wasn't inferior to the last move of his previous life. "With my heart's blood, collapse all tribulations." It could be seen how domineering this move was. But Chuyang didn't even need to think about such a move now. He didn't have enough strength and cultivation to use it completely. Just as he was thinking, a strange airflow suddenly surged out from the sword guard and poured into his dantian. In an instant, Chuyang only felt that his body was filled with endless spiritual energy of heaven and earth, almost exploding. Just as he was about to circulate his energy to dissolve this energy flow, his gaze suddenly focused. He saw the white jade platform holding the sword guard slowly rise and crack in the air. It turned into a big word. "Sword Master Heaven and Earth, who can stop me?" This word had the same style, the same arrogance, and the same insufferably arrogance. Chuyang's gaze focused on the first word. "Come." This word was clearly the word he saw. Whether it was the charm or the handwriting, it was exactly the same. What does this word mean? Chuyang frowned. He tried his best to calm down his breathing and sober his thoughts. "Sword Master Heaven and Earth. Who can stop me?" Chuyang muttered, but he felt uncomfortable and felt that something was wrong. But he couldn't tell what was wrong. It shouldn't be read like this, that is. "Sword Master Heaven and Earth, who can stop me? Come." Shaking his head, Chuyang still felt that something was wrong. He muttered, "How can this heaven and earth be ruled by a sword? No matter how magical a sword is, it's still something created by human hands. How can it rule the heaven and earth? So it's definitely not." Chuyang looked at it for a long time, and the more he looked, the more he felt that this word was arrogant. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and sneer. "Sword Master Heaven and Earth, who can stop me? Let me." After saying this, he suddenly felt proud. He roared and laughed. Yes, Sword Master Heaven and Earth, obviously it's referring to the Calamity Sword, and I'm the Calamity Sword's master. Who can stop me? Of course it's me. So, let me." Chuyang looked up and laughed. The large characters suddenly dispersed, turning into wisps of flowing light and disappearing into the lake. Chuyang smiled faintly, his gaze a little unfocused. A wisp of warmth rose from his heart. He thought, "I've already obtained the 4th fragment of the Calamity Sword. The 5th fragment is in the upper 3 heavens. Maybe I should go to my home to take a look." "Father. Mother." This was such a strange yet intimate name. Chuyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. In his previous life and this life, he had longed for family love. Now, when it was so close, Chuyang felt his heart was in a mess. He didn't know what kind of feeling it was. After a long sigh, Chuyang stood there despondently. In his previous life, he didn't know and didn't have any clues, so he couldn't go back even if he wanted to. But in this life, since he knew that his parents didn't do anything wrong back then, he wouldn't have a conscience if he didn't go back and let his birth parents suffer and have sleepless nights. Wouldn't that be extremely unfilial? How could a loving mother wash her face with tears as a son? He took out his purple crystal jade essence from the Calamity Space with one hand and played with it unconsciously. There seemed to be a faint warmth on the purple crystal jade essence. Chuyang couldn't help but put the jade essence to his mouth and kissed it lightly. His eyes quickly became misty. "Father, Mother, how did you survive all these years? Did you miss me? I've missed you for 2 lifetimes already. At this moment, the spiritual energy surging out of the sword guard finally occupied his meridians like a tsunami. Chu Yang frowned and was about to use the heaven-lifting divine technique to guide the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He had a feeling, as long as this spiritual energy was digested by him, he would be able to reach the heavens in one step and become a sword sovereign. He wouldn't even be inferior to Gu Duxing's current 4th stage sword sovereign. This was a great opportunity. Such an opportunity only belonged to the Calamity Sword Master. But just as he started to use his spiritual energy, his body suddenly shook and there was a piercing pain in his head. It was as if millions of steel needles were piercing his brain from all directions at the same time. The spiritual energy that he had just gathered actually dissipated under the attack of this excruciating pain. Chu Yang's eyes widened and he couldn't help but roar to the sky. But he found that he couldn't make a sound. It was as if he had fallen into a nightmare. Then, countless information surged into his brain. Chu Yang felt that there was an explosion in his brain. It was blank. All of his divine senses and consciousness were blank. Chu Yang had lost all his thoughts. He had lost all ability to control his own body. He didn't even have time to let out a groan before he fell down stiffly on the ground. Dizziness, unconsciousness, deep unconsciousness, unconsciousness. In his right hand, the purple crystal jade essence that he had just taken out was still tightly held. His palm shone with a purple luster. Everything happened so suddenly that he didn't even have the time to keep the purple crystal jade essence back into the calamity space. He was already unconscious. The strong backlash from swallowing the divine soul of the first Calamity Sword Master actually came at this moment. When the power of the sword guard surged into his body, the backlash from the divine soul suddenly exploded. It directly destroyed Chu Yang's brain. It caused him to fall into a complete unconsciousness. At the bottom of the lake of despair, waves suddenly surged. A stream of water emerged from the ground and swept up Chu Yang's body. Then, like a crazily climbing tornado, it swept up Chu Yang's body and rushed straight up. Chapter 728. Yang Ruolan was in a state of despair as she searched the snowy plateau. She searched from south to north and from east to west. She didn't close her eyes from morning to night. Then she searched from night to dawn. She stubbornly searched. Occasionally she would climb to a high place and look around. Her long hair fluttered in the cold wind. She even lifted up some of the slightly cracked rocks and large ice blocks to examine them. Chu Feiling only sighed. Even a 3-year-old child could see that those cracks couldn't hide anyone. But Yang Ruolan was an adult and a monarch-level expert. Yet she had lost her judgment. But he didn't say anything. He only accompanied his wife and searched around. He understood his wife's feelings. Yang Ruolan stared blankly. Her hair was scattered. Her beautiful face was already haggard. Her lips were dry. Her bright eyes were bloodshot. Yes, they said that Chu Yang was on this mountain. He didn't go down. They saw him when they went down. Then they went up and down the mountain. There was only one way. But, where was he? Where did he go? Yang Ruolan was about to collapse. My son. Where did my son go? It had been 10 years. Yang Ruolan had never been happy since her son went missing. She felt guilty, blamed herself, and worried. She missed her son all the time. Where was he? Was he still alive? Was he picked up by someone? Was he doing well? Did the person who picked him up abuse him? Did he practice martial arts? He was 3 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, 18 years old. It was cold. Was he cold? Did he have any clothes to protect him from the cold? It was raining. Where was he? Would he get sick from the rain? It was snowing. The road was slippery. Would he fall? She had been fantasizing. She had been hoping, but she didn't dare to believe it. The more time passed, the more hopeless she felt. The Chu clan searched for him year after year, but there was no result. Every time she searched, Yang Ruolan would start to stay up all night. Every time she saw someone enter the Chu clan, her gaze would follow him closely. Later, Chu Feiyan, who was in charge of searching, would run away when he saw his sister-in-law. He really couldn't bear to see the deep hope in her eyes. Every time Chu Feiyan saw such a gaze, he felt that he had committed a heinous crime. Year after year of disappointment, year after year of despair. Finally this year he received news of his son. It was confirmed that their son was still alive. He had grown up. He had a lot of skills. His wisdom was outstanding and he was handsome. He was chivalrous. His heroic spirit was matchless. He was the most perfect man in the world. At that moment, Yang Ruolan's heart exploded. pride, heartache, relief, longing, hope, worry. 18 years of emotions, almost all gathered in her heart during this period of time. All these emotions were fermenting crazily in her motherly heart. He was about to explode. He was finally here. He was finally going to see his son. The evidence was irrefutable. The location was confirmed. They just had to wait until they went up the mountain to meet. But, when they reached the top of the mountain, all they saw was a vast expanse of flat land. Where did the child go? This was Yang Ruolan's greatest hope. She was also the most excited. But at this moment, this great hope and excitement instantly became the cruelest blow. She finally stopped searching. She stood blankly and helplessly by the side of the lake of death. Her eyes were lifeless and she was dejected. It was as if the pillar that supported her had been completely taken away at this moment. Her tears quietly slid down and dripped onto the snowy ground. The couple was heartbroken. They didn't realize that the calm water of the lake of death was slowly churning. It was as if something was about to rush out from the bottom of the lake. Yang Ruolan stood there dejectedly. She didn't speak or move. She was like a lifeless statue. The moment her tears fell, they came into contact with the bitter cold. A faint mist rose up and froze on her face. She didn't even circulate her martial arts to resist the cold. She just stood there blankly and watched. Ruolan, are you okay? A hand was placed on her shoulder. It was Chu Feiling. Yang Ruolan didn't seem to feel anything. She stared blankly at her surroundings. Suddenly, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Where is he? Where is my son?" Her voice spread far and wide. In this silent world there were echoes. Where is he? Where is my son? Chu Feiling sadly closed his eyes. He knew that his beloved wife was on the verge of breaking down. But at this moment he felt as if all the bones in his body had been taken away. He was extremely disappointed. Chu Feiling was exhausted from all the hard work he had done during this period. He forced himself to stay alert and said tiredly, "Ruolan, you..." Just as he said these two words, his body suddenly shook violently. He screamed in shock as if he had discovered something. Just now, his eyes unconsciously swept across the surface of the lake. He suddenly realized that the calm surface of the lake had unknowingly split into waves and surged violently. And in the center of the lake, a tornado-like current was emerging. But this wasn't the most surprising thing. The current seemed to be carrying a human body and was slowly rushing towards the shore. What is that? Chu Feiling's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He pointed forward with a trembling voice. A human? Yang Ruolan's unfocused eyes casually looked over. Suddenly her pupils shrank. An indescribable feeling suddenly surged in her heart. It was as if the blood in her body was boiling at this moment. An indescribable feeling rose from her heart. Is that a human? Yang Ruolan's heart was beating wildly. Her eyes were wide open and unblinking. It is a human. Chu Feiling gazed into the distance. I don't know if it is a living person or a human. Shut up! Yang Ruolan suddenly shouted. Her eyes were almost spitting fire. It was as if she was going to swallow her husband alive. Chu Feiling shrank his neck and hurriedly shut his mouth. Just as he spoke, he knew that he had said something wrong. According to the description, only his son was on the surface. How could he say that it was a human? He laughed dryly and could only look into the distance. It is coming over. It seems very young, it is not very old, it is not moving. With a whoosh, Yang Ruolan had already swept out like a gust of wind. At this moment Yang Ruolan's speed shocked Chu Feiling. Not to mention that they had been on a long journey for more than 10 days. So, the two of them were already exhausted. They would feel tired just by lifting their hands. In fact, Yang Ruolan's speed wasn't as fast as this even at her peak. Chu Feiling could not understand where his wife's strength came from at this time. Before Chu Feiling could react, Yang Ruolan had already jumped into the water with a splash and swam over with her hands and feet. She hugged the black-clothed human body that floated over. Yang Ruolan let out an earth-shattering scream with just one look. This scream made Chu Feiling feel as if Yang Ruolan's heart was about to burst out from her mouth. It is him. Our child. Yang Ruolan's voice was trembling and sharp. Then she wailed. In the water, she hugged the body tightly and did not let go. However, she seemed to have lost all her strength. She cried with joy, "He is still alive. He is still alive. He is still alive." Chu Feiling only felt his whole body go numb. All the hair on his body stood up. This was a feeling of extreme excitement and uncontrollable. All the blood in his body suddenly rushed to his head. Stars appeared in front of his eyes and he almost vomited blood and fainted. His body swayed twice and he rushed out like an arrow. With a splash, he jumped into the water and desperately pulled the two people out of the water. The husband and wife were dripping with water. They knelt on the snowy ground by the lake. Their breathing was rapid and their eyes did not blink. They looked at the young man's face as if they were looking at a treasure. Sword-like eyebrows, a fair face, a straight nose, thin lips and tightly shut eyes. As she looked, Yang Ruolan choked. It is absolutely true. This is my son. Chu Yang's hand was still tightly clutching that piece of purple crystal jade essence, which was emitting a brilliant purple light. However, even if he didn't have the purple crystal jade essence in his hand, Yang Ruolan still recognized it at a glance. This is my son. There was no reason. This was purely a mother's intuition. This was her nature. Chu Feiling recognized him at first glance. This is my sworn younger brother. In other words, King of Hell Chu Chuyang, my son. At this moment he did not know what to feel in his heart. He almost wanted to stomp his feet and shout, but he also wanted to cry out loud. All the joys and sorrows of the past 18 years rushed to his heart in an instant. That embarrassing feeling of mistaking a child for a younger brother from before had completely vanished. What was there to be afraid of? My son is back. This is more important than anything. Right? Yang Ruolan's eyes scanned the young man's face. Although it was a question, her tone was certain. Yes. Chu Feiling nodded affirmatively. That's great. Yang Ruolan held Chu Yang's body in her arms as if he was a fragile treasure. She slowly pressed her face against his. Tears rolled out of her eyes and flowed onto Chu Yang's face. She sobbed softly. She did not dare to be loud, but her body was trembling. The trembling was getting more and more intense. Heaven bless me. My son is finally back by my side. After moving for a while, she remembered that her son was still unconscious. Quick, take a look. What's wrong with him? Why is he unconscious? Yang Ruolan placed her hand on Chu Yang's wrist and urged Chu Feiling to take a look. Chu Feiling nodded heavily. He placed his palm on his son's back. A strong wave of elemental energy carefully entered his son's body. After a long time, the husband and wife looked at each other in shock. Chapter 729. Yes, he's not injured at all. Looking at him, he seems to be in a deep sleep. Chu Feiling frowned. Moreover, the qi in his body is full and messy. It's almost a mess. Moreover, it's empty as if he doesn't have any cultivation at all. This is the first time I've seen such a strange scene. Yang Ruolan asked worriedly, then what's going on? Chu Feiling grinned secretly and thought, what's going on? It'd be great if I knew what's going on. He grinned and said, this is really strange. The two wives didn't know that Chu Yang's current situation had never happened since the creation of the heavenly continent. It was definitely an unprecedented case. Not to mention the two of them, even if a few supreme martial artists were here facing Chu Yang's current situation, they would also be in a daze. Now, in Chu Yang's space of consciousness, he was trying his best to digest the spiritual energy that had suddenly exploded and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that had surged out from the sword guard. His consciousness and his spiritual energy swelled one moment, then swelled the next moment, then swelled the next moment. It went round and round without the slightest pause. All of his spiritual energy, all of his consciousness and all of his soul were used for this. He couldn't spare any energy for anything else at all. It's impossible for him to wake up before he's completely stabilized. The power of his divine monument was like a dam that was on the verge of collapsing. Water was constantly overflowing, and he had to constantly repair it passively. Where there was a breach, he had to quickly repair it. He couldn't let the line of defense be broken. The moment they let their guard down, a hole would be breached and they wouldn't be able to repair it in time. Then the dam would collapse instantly. If that were to happen, Chuyang would really become an idiot, so Chuyang himself didn't even know that he was underwater now? Or was he there? He was completely unconscious. After being busy for half a day, the husband and wife were exhausted. They looked at each other and were at a loss of what to do. What should we do? Tears were brewing in Yang Ruolan's eyes again. She was so scared. It wasn't easy to find her son, but he would be in a deep sleep. If that were to happen, Yang Ruolan would definitely break down immediately. The only thing we can do now is to return to the clan and make plans. Chu Feiling's face was solemn as he said, however, from the looks of it, it's not a big deal. His breathing is steady, his face is rosy, and his heartbeat is strong. Perhaps he'll recover after sleeping for a few days. Yang Ruolan carefully felt the pulse on her son's wrist. She finally felt a little relieved and said, I think so too. It's the same as sleeping. His pulse is long. But how can his sleep be so? Perhaps he fell into some kind of trap. However, since it's no different from sleeping, it's not something to be afraid of even if he fell into a trap. He'll be fine after sleeping for a few days. Chu Feiling tried his best to comfort him. Yang Ruolan thought for a long time. Then she finally heaved a sigh of relief. I hope so. If it's not what you said. Chu Feiling, you'll have to pay the price for what you said today. Chu Feiling's eyes immediately widened. I was just comforting you. What? Why did it suddenly become my responsibility? With a bitter face he turned his head and coughed. Baidu Cheba Chihang Xiezi. His heart was full of helplessness. Son, wake up quickly. If you don't wake up your mother? I can't afford to offend her. Yang Ruolan hugged her son and examined his face. Her face was full of satisfaction. Look, our son. His face is so delicate and fair. It's even prettier than a young lady. There's a hint of rosy in his fair skin. No wonder so many extraordinary women in the world are madly in love with him. This sentence was true. Chu Yang's body had been cleansed dozens of times by the tribulation sword. If his skin wasn't good, there would be no justice. The more Yang Ruolan looked, the more satisfied she was. The more she looked, the more she smiled from the bottom of her heart. Finally she said, no matter what, it's good that my son is back. Even if he's asleep, my son is back. Failing, the feeling of hugging my son is really good. It's like hugging the whole world. As for other things, I feel like I don't lack anything. Don't lack anything? Chu Feiling laughed and thought, this is how you feel at this moment. Now you only want to find your son. Now that he's in your arms, of course you don't want anything else. If he doesn't wake up in a few days, you'll be worried sick. By then you'll feel like you're lacking everything. Yang Ruolan's wish for nearly 10 years was to find her son. Now that she had found him, she was so happy that her heart was about to explode. She hugged her son tightly and didn't let go for even a moment. At this moment, she suddenly felt that the pain of nearly 10 years was nothing. 10 years of worry had all been compensated. She hugged Chu Yang like this and began to regulate her breath. During this period of time she was really exhausted. Her mental and physical strength were all exhausted. But she only rested for half a morning before the husband and wife opened their eyes at the same time and stood up. Their son was unconscious and they couldn't find the cause of his illness. How could they delay such a big matter? So, once they recovered their ability to move, the two were ready to set off. I'll carry him. We'll go down the mountain first and find the nearest market. We'll buy some things and hire a carriage. We'll immediately rush to the entrance and return to the upper three heavens. As long as we return to the clan, everything will be fine. Even, the resources in the upper three heavens are much better than in the upper three heavens, Chu Feiling said. Wait. Yang Ruolan frowned. How can we carry him? Wouldn't it be uncomfortable to carry him? Forget it, I'll do it. I'll carry him. You carry him and his body is hanging halfway down, swinging here and there. He's unconscious. How can you be so cruel and kiss him again? Chu Feiling was speechless. He couldn't even carry him? But in front of his wife he could only give in. He admitted that he was a cruel father. Then I'll carry him. With your body, carrying your son on a long journey, you'll be exhausted, Chu Feiling said. Well, you're so stupid. Stretch out your hands and hold him. Oh, don't let his neck hang down. That's uncomfortable. You're so right. Oh, why are you so stupid? Yang Ruolan chattered on and on, constantly criticizing and correcting him. Chu Feiling felt that he was being ordered around by his wife. He almost couldn't walk anymore. Before he could say anything, Yang Ruolan had already taken off her cloak and draped it over Chu Yang's body. Then she carefully picked up Baidu Tieba Chi Hang Xiezi, and made sure that there wasn't any cold air that could touch his skin. Then she shouted, "Why aren't you leaving? It's so cold. Do you want him to freeze? It's obviously because you're busy here and wasting time, isn't it?" Chu Feiling's face was full of black lines. He was angry but didn't dare to say anything. He could only carry this little ancestor that he had just found and speed up. Previously, he didn't have much status in the family because he couldn't find his son. But that was understandable. Now that he had found his son, Chu Feiling found that his status in the family had plummeted again. Originally, he still had some status in his wife's heart. Now, he was directly thrown to Java. So, the husband and wife worked hard while the wife followed closely beside him. She looked at her son in her husband's arms like an old hen taking care of her eggs. Sometimes she smiled foolishly, sometimes she frowned, sometimes she was lost in thought, and sometimes she sighed and gritted her teeth. On the snowy road down the mountain, the two figures gradually disappeared. When they reached the foot of the mountain, the husband and wife ran for a while and found a market. They bought a carriage directly. The carriage was cushioned with flowers and felt warm and fragrant. Then they carefully carried their son in. Young Ruolan followed in closely. She was afraid that her son would be bumped while running. So she folded a quilt and placed it on her lap. Then she carefully lifted her son's head and placed it on her lap. She hugged her son with both hands and made sure that her son wouldn't be hurt by the bumps. Then she finally gave the order to start the journey. Chu Fei-ling didn't have the right to sit in the carriage. He could only be the coachman. Moreover, other coachmen were polite to the owners of the carriages. As a coachman, he would probably be scolded until his head was full of bumps. He waved his whip. Go! The carriage shot out like an arrow. You're starting too fast. Can't you speed up slowly? Yang Ruolan complained. The family of three finally left the Heaven Sword Peak and headed towards the entrance of the upper three heavens without stopping. At this moment, Chu Fei-ling and his wife didn't know that the entrance to the heavens was about to be closed. They were only thinking of rushing back, the faster the better. However, it was the second day after the family of three entered the upper three heavens. All the entrances to the upper three heavens were closed. From then on, they were no longer accessible. Chu Yang was unconscious. Naturally, he didn't know that he was being carried by his parents all the way to the upper three heavens. If he knew, he would probably stay in the upper three heavens no matter what. Because there were too many unfinished things in the upper three heavens, how could Chu Yang be willing to leave just like that? How could he be at ease? But he didn't know. When he found out, he was already in the upper three heavens. All the passages were closed. It was difficult to come down even if he wanted to. Of course, if the sword spirit was awake at this moment, he would control his body to stay even if he had to damage Chu Yang's divine soul again. After all, Chu Yang's divine soul was overflowing. If the sword spirit used a little, it wouldn't affect Chu Yang at all. Instead, it would reduce Chu Yang's burden. However, the sword spirit had already fallen into a deep sleep at this moment. The bizarre twists and turns of the world were evident. It couldn't be changed by anyone's will. The second day after Chu Fei-ling and Yang Ruolan left, beside the Lake of Despair, there was a small snow pile here. It was inconspicuous. However, following a loud explosion, the snow and ice suddenly flew out from the ground, revealing a big hole in the ground. A few figures dashed out of the pit as if they were flying. Everyone's faces were pale. Mo Tianji Gudu Xing Ao Xie Yun, Xie Dan Xiong Gmo Luo Kadi Huyan Aoba. They were frozen here by the Mirage's supreme magical power. They finally broke free at this moment. Everyone felt that he had dreamed the strangest dream. Third update. This chapter had been written to waste once. Originally, I wanted to let the main character stay and wrap up the upper three heavens. After writing more than 2,000 words, I realized that I didn't feel any joy at all. Thus, I had no choice but to give up my original plan and start writing again. I wrote until now. Sometimes the aftertaste is also good, right? But I will slowly insert it in the future. Yes, 3 chapters. Begging for votes. Begging for the glory of the great God. Begging for recommendation votes. Begging for evaluation votes. The upper three heavens has finally begun. Brothers, I'm very excited, I'm very excited, I'm very excited. Chapter 730. Mo Tianji and the others were at a loss. Their bodies were covered in ice and snow. They couldn't come back to their senses for a while. They didn't understand. They were clearly in the tent. How did they end up in such a huge pit in the blink of an eye? Other than Huyan Ao Bo, the others felt like they had a strange dream. However, they weren't sure if this dream was real or not. They were afraid that others would laugh at them. Their lips moved, but they didn't say anything. They only looked at each other's faces. They were scrutinizing and examining each other. Their eyes were full of questions. Then everyone stared at each other. They frowned and seemed to be deep in thought. Everyone had the same expression. They looked at each other thoughtfully. Then they looked at themselves thoughtfully. Then they looked at the Lake of Death. The Lake of Death was calm. It seemed like it hadn't moved since ancient times. I think I had a dream. After a long time, GMO was the first to break the silence. Me too. Luo Kadi replied. I think I saw boss. Gu Duxing frowned. He looked cold and worried. He said, boss's situation doesn't seem good. Yes, that's it. I still remember boss looking at me anxiously. Xie Dan Xiong was deep in thought. That's right, quiet. Mo Tianji frowned. He was deep in thought. His gaze was unpredictable. When he heard that things were getting chaotic, he couldn't help but scold them. Everyone calmed down. They looked at Emotianji and waited for him to explain. Everyone has a dream. If it's the same dream, then it's not a dream, Emotianji said coldly. He rubbed his forehead and said, let's put this matter together. He said softly, when I went down, boss seemed to be unable to move. He looked very anxious. There was a strange illusion beside him. I couldn't see his face clearly. This illusion asked me if I was willing to die for him. When Emotianji said this, the brothers started to clamor, yes, yes. We were the same. Emotianji frowned and continued to speak. I suddenly arrived at that place. So I took a look at the surroundings. It seems like that's the bottom of the lake of despair. What's strange is that there aren't any corpses at the bottom of the lake. There isn't even a trace of seaweed. At the bottom of the lake it was very flat. There were huge tiles on the floor without any undulations. Emotianji closed his eyes and frowned. He was trying his best to recall the scene at that time. There was a small hole between each tile. And a string of bubbles came out from these small holes. That's right. That's exactly what happened. Everyone suddenly recalled that the scene at that time was indeed like that. So, we are going to the same place. Emotianji's face was full of worry. He concluded, then we are definitely not dreaming. Everyone's expression turned heavy at the same time. Emotianji looked around and finally said, Aobua, are you dreaming? Huyan Aobua replied, no. Emotianji replied with an oh. His eyes flashed as he said, who else hasn't had this experience? He looked at them one by one. Everyone shook their heads. Emotianji grunted. Without any hesitation he said, Aobua, can I trouble you to look around and see if there is anyone else here? Huyan Aobua immediately stood up and said straightforwardly, okay. She immediately ran out. Although she looked rough, she was a smart girl. She knew that these brothers wanted to discuss an extremely secret matter. Emotianji wanted to send her away. The matter they were going to discuss was probably extremely sensitive and serious. Otherwise, based on her relationship with GMO, and Emotianji's understanding of people, he would not be so unreasonable. Therefore, she very understandingly walked away. When Emotianji said this, the faces of the brothers immediately turned heavy. They also understood that Emotianji must have his reasons for doing this. Moreover, this matter was of great importance. This matter concerns Big Brother? Emotianji explained with some difficulty. He looked at GMO apologetically, I have to be careful. Everyone nodded slowly. Today's matter is very strange. I don't know what you are thinking or guessing, but I hope that you will all keep this matter to yourselves. Emotianji said word by word seriously. Gu Duxing and the rest nodded again. This time when we went down, the shadow asked if we were willing to sacrifice for Big Brother? Emotianji sneered, since he asked us, it means that Big Brother has already rejected this question. Big Brother has already defeated this shadow to a certain extent. That is why the shadow asked us. That is why we encountered this situation. Emotianji's voice was heavy, but Big Brother's strength is incomparable to that shadow's. When we went down he could not even move. From this question we can see that the key to this problem is not us. It is Big Brother. We need to sacrifice something for Big Brother to be able to escape and even do some things. Emotianji said seriously, but now we are very normal. We did not pay any price and did not sacrifice anything. That is to say, Big Brother rejected the shadow and saved us. Then what will happen to Big Brother in the end? Emotianji's eyes suddenly became sharper than Gu Duxing's sword. The breathing of the brothers quickened. After being reminded by Emotianji, everyone thought of the danger that Chuyang was in. This was really something unimaginable. With the Phantom's heaven-defying methods, killing Chuyang was no different from killing a chicken. So, Big Brother has not come up yet. He is still down there. Emotianji slowly raised a hand and stopped the brothers from moving. So, from now on I, Emotianji, give you a gag order. We can wait. But this matter concerns Big Brother's life. If anyone dares to leak it out, don't blame us for not being courteous. His eyes swept across the crowd like a knife. Everyone nodded heavily. In fact, what Emotianji had said was completely different from his final warning. But Emotianji said it so straightforwardly, giving everyone a feeling of abruptness. If anything happens to Big Brother, it will be because of us. I hope you all remember this. Understand this. We will wait for heavens. Emotianji took a deep breath and said, After heavens, if Big Brother does not come out, we will go down and search. Counting yesterday, there are 8 more days. Heavens? Ao Yun frowned. Then, isn't that, Big Brother is not an ordinary person. If water could drown him, I'm afraid he would have drowned long ago. Mo Tianji said lightly, there are 8 more days. I don't want anything to happen. Mo Tianji had gathered his brothers because he wanted to explain Chu Yang's status. He knew that among the brothers, there were already a few who had vaguely guessed something, but they could not prove it and did not dare to believe it. He wanted to use this opportunity to explain Chu Yang's identity to everyone. So he sent Hu Yanalbo away. But when the words reached his mouth, he changed his mind. Chu Yang would not do it. His matters should be told to the brothers by himself. It was not good for him to overstep his boundaries and meddle in other people's affairs. But his heart was also filled with anxiety like never before. That night, Mo Tianji used the world-controlling divine technique and began to predict the heavenly secrets. Near dawn, there was a wah sound. Gu Duxing rushed over at lightning speed and saw that the 72 lamps beside Mo Tianji had all been extinguished. Mo Tianji's face was as white as paper. He spat out a large pool of blood and was on the verge of death. The heavenly secrets cannot be predicted. Mo Tianji's eyes flashed with intense worry. He forced himself to say this to Gu Duxing. Gu Duxing nodded heavily and his eyes shone sharply. Rest first. Big Brother will be fine. On the second day, Mo Tianji had just recovered some of his energy and could not wait to start his second divination. This time he directly fainted. It was already the 7th day. In these 7 days, Mo Tianji risked being devoured by the heavenly secrets whenever he had a little bit of energy. But every time he was severely attacked by the heavenly secrets. He could not predict anything. Mo Tianji became weaker day by day. On the 8th day, Gu Duxing forcefully stopped Mo Tianji's divination. He slapped Mo Tianji, who had almost sunk into paranoia, awake. Mo Tianji woke up and let out a long sigh. On the 8th day, the brothers began to enter the water to search. But when they entered the water, they realized that the depth of the Lake of Death was unprecedented. Also, for some reason, the buoyancy of the Lake of Death was also incomparably huge. Even with Gu Duxing's cultivation as a 4th-grade sword sovereign, he could only dive for less than 2,000 feet while carrying a huge rock that weighed 5,000 pounds. He could not go any further. Such a cruel reality made the brothers feel almost hopeless. Mo Tianji stood by the shore and quietly looked at the calm waters of the Lake of Death. He did not move for a long time. In these few days he had vomited blood and his body was extremely weak. Thus he did not enter the water. But Mo Tianji firmly believed in one thing. Chu Yang would not die. He would definitely come back. Looking at the calm waters of the lake, Mo Tianji's gaze was far away. He thought to himself, Chu Yang, if you don't come back, I will curse you for all eternity. Mo Tianji tried his best to persuade Fan Tian to stop this futile effort. The brothers came out of the water naked. Their faces were pale and they looked as if they had lost their souls. Even someone as strong as Gu Duxing had tears in his eyes. A few days ago he still turned his body to hide it. But now he did not even have the mood to hide it. There was an indescribable sadness in his heart. It almost tore everyone's heart into pieces. Everyone felt as if their hearts were bleeding. The word "s" filled everyone's heart. But no one dared to say it out loud. They did not even dare to look at each other. Occasionally, when 2 pairs of eyes met, they would immediately look away. It was as if the other person's gaze contained information that they did not want to see. Chapter 731. Seeing everyone's expression, Mo Tianji was furious. He felt that he had never been so angry in his life. Boss won't do that. Mo Tianji said angrily. He will definitely come back. His eyes were also red. Boss is only leaving temporarily. Don't tell me you have so little confidence in him? It was a heavy sadness. Even if boss did do that, it's still for you. That was for you. Mo Tianji stomped his feet and cursed. What kind of people are you? You're using this method to repay him? All the brothers were shocked and raised their heads. How many things are left for boss to do? How many things are left for you to do? Are you going to do it with such a sad expression? Mo Tianji said angrily, Gu Duxing, pull out your sword. If anyone dares to shed a tear, kill them. Everyone held their breaths in that instant. Their eyes shone with a warm light. And us. And boss's goal. Mo Tianji gritted his teeth and stared at everyone. That night, boss pointed out everyone's weakness and direction. What? It's not to make you cry. Emotianji shouted, a bunch of bastards. When will you be able to experience boss's painstaking efforts? Even just once. GMO Luo Kudi and the rest were stunned. Did that mean boss already had a premonition at that time? Purposely arranged for his funeral? Gu Duxing took a deep breath and suddenly roared towards the sky. His roar surged and soared into the sea of clouds, shattering the clouds in the sky. His voice was filled with pain and sorrow. Clang. Gu Duxing unsheathed his black dragon sword and let out a dragon roar. His eyes shone and tears rolled down his cheeks. I Gu Duxing have been alone since young and was adopted by my foster father. In the Gu clan I was ostracized by my 2 foster brothers. Sister Xiaomiao was beaten until she was disabled because of me. She was imprisoned in the dragon prison cave. Her future was bleak and uncertain. Gu Duxing's voice was heavy, fierce and resolute. My hopes were dashed. I went out to the lower 3 heavens and met Boss. My originally gloomy future suddenly shone brightly. It was Boss who gave me hope and lifted me up. He let me become a sword sovereign. Let me save Sister Xiaomiao. In these 3 days, let me rule the world with my sword and command the wind and clouds. Boss made up for all my regrets and completed all my leduo, but he never claimed credit for it. Gu Duxing looked up to the sky and howled. Although he's younger than me, I'm willing to acknowledge him as my boss. Now it's time for me, Gu Duxing, to fulfill Boss's wish. Holding the sword in one hand, Gu Duxing's expression became even more bleak and lonely. His eyes quietly looked at the flashing blade of the black dragon sword. Everyone has their own aspirations. You can't force them. If anyone wants to leave, I Gu Duxing will see you off. Whoever leaves is a bastard. Jimo's face was full of tears as he shouted. Even if you want to S, you have to wait until I've fulfilled Boss's wish before S. Luo Kadi crouched on the ground, punching the icy ground with his fists. He didn't use any elemental energy and his fists were dripping with blood. They were remorseful. Why didn't they think of it that night? Chu Yang had never been so demanding of his brothers. But that night, Chu Yang was very different from his usual self. He was simply nitpicking. Any shortcomings were magnified and attacked. This was not normal at all. Why didn't they think of it? We're not leaving. Ao Shiyun and Xie Danqiong took a deep breath and forcibly held back the tears in their eyes. Before Boss's wish is fulfilled, no one can leave. What is Boss's wish? Mo Tianji frowned and looked at everyone. To charge into the upper 3 heavens. GMO said fiercely. To laugh at the heavens. Luo Kadi said seriously. The heavenly armament pavilion. Gu Duxing's eyes lit up. His 5 fingers slowly gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. Wrong. Mo Tianji said seriously, these are not the most important. Boss's main wish is, for all of you to charge to the peak. Boss's wish is to protect. Boss said that if one day he becomes a legend, then he hopes that his legend will have us. If one day we become legends of this world, then he hopes that this legend will have him. Gu Duxing took a deep breath and said this sentence word by word. Thinking of Chu Yang's expression when he said this in the lower 3 heavens, Gu Duxing's heart was in so much pain that he wanted to die. That day, there was me, Dong Wushang, Ji Mo Luo Kudi Rui Butong. At that time, Dong Wushang said, as long as Boss can give me a saber that is compatible with my soul, I will work for you for the rest of my life. It's not that serious. It's not about working for me. Chu Yang said seriously, what I lack are brothers, not subordinates. What I lack are brothers who are willing to reach the peak with me, to control the winds and clouds and to dominate the world. What I hope is that in my life, I will always have a few good brothers who will never leave me, who will take care of me with all sincerity, and who will share life with me. Chu Yang said deeply and longingly, I hope that I can do anything for my brothers. That kind of feeling without regrets is the feeling of a man. I also hope that when I am at the peak, my brothers will also be there so that I won't be lonely. And what I hope even more is that when my brothers are at the peak, I won't let them be lonely. What I hope even more is that when I am down and out, when I am helpless, when I am hesitating, there will be brothers by my side. Chu Yang said very emotionally. A trace of stubborn desire shone from his eyes. Love was what Chu Yang lacked the most in his previous life. It was also what he yearned for the most in this life. I hope to fight for a lifetime of glory and splendor with all of you, to fight for an eternal legend. And what I hope even more is that if we can become legends thousands of years later, then I hope that in my legend, you will be there, and in your legend I will be there. I will never let down the word brother in my life. When he said this, even Gu Duxing and Rui Budong who were at the side were stunned. Both of their eyes were shining brightly. A few years later, if I become a legend, then I hope that my legend will have you. A few years later, if you become a legend, then I hope that your legend will have me. I will never let down the word brother in my life. I will never let down the word brother in my life. Chu Yang sighed. His eyes looked at the dim horizon in the distance and he exhaled deeply. Brothers are forged through hard work. Through trials and tribulations together, through hard work together, on the road together all the way forward. Only then can one be as firm as steel and love more than gold and stone. Not only Gu Duxing, but GMO and Luo Kudi also thought of that day at the same time at this moment. That day was night and the stars were shining brightly. That night Chu Yang's eyes were shining. The eyes of his brothers were shining brightly. That night was the night when the relationship between the brothers was first established and the embryonic form was first formed. I will never let down the word brother in my life. GMO and Luo Kudi lowered their heads, softly chewing on these words. Suddenly, it was as if an electric current had suddenly passed through their bodies, and even their souls seemed to be trembling. Yes, Chu Yang had already used his own life to prove that these words were not just empty words. His brothers could sacrifice themselves for him. Really? As long as he agreed, there would be no problem and there would definitely be no danger. But he refused. He chose to protect his brothers and sacrifice himself. Although during this process, due to the restrictions at the bottom of the water, none of the brothers could say a word to him, but the anger, anxiety, and worry in Chu Yang's eyes at that time were clearly remembered. I don't want you to lose. Only I can lose. Because I am the boss and I have the obligation and responsibility to hold up the sky for my brothers. As long as I am around, no one can hurt my brothers. He did not say these words out loud and the brothers did not hear them either. But now that they thought about it, they heard these words from the deepest part of their hearts. He had long expected this, so he sent his brothers away and came alone. He had long had a premonition, so he gave them a heads up in advance and pointed out their respective directions. He had thought of everything for everyone. If he left, they should be relieved, right? I hope that one day, even without me, all of you can still laugh proudly. These were also words that Chu Yang had said. Ao Shiyun and Xia Danqiong sobbed. GMO and Luo Kadi were in tears. Gu Duxing looked up at the sky, his face cold and stiff. Mo Qinji gently closed his eyes and his tears finally fell. It was as if he had heard Chu Yang's words when he first met him. Blowing through the lake, only I can control the purple jade flute. Chu Yang, you haven't married my sister. Mo Qinji closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. His cheeks bulged as he roared in pain. How can you lose? How can you lose? This is what you promised. You kept your promise, but are you going to go back on your words? Then I will look down on you. I will look down on you. The cold wind whistled and snow danced on the heavenly sword peak. The lake of despair was covered in fog. The world was boundless. After a long time. Have you cried enough? Mo Qinji said coldly, from now on no one is allowed to cry. I will distribute the tasks. Chu Yang's wishes, one by one, must be fulfilled. If you can't, find a place to wipe your throat. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion does not need such people. Chu Yang's wishes. Big Brother's wishes. Gu Du Xing, GMO, Luo Kadi, Ao Xie Yun and Xie Danqiong looked up at the same time. First, Big Brother Chu Yang of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion is currently missing. Mo Qinji's Adam's apple bobbed as he repeated the words. The second word, missing, was said in a sonorous voice. Dong Wushang and Rui Butong are currently in the upper three heavens. Therefore, Gu Du Xing is in charge of everything in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Mo Qinji said solemnly, all brothers including me must obey all orders. If there is any disobedience, we will kill them together without mercy. Yes. Gu Du Xing's sharp eyes fell on the black dragon sword. He slowly and heavily agreed, as long as I, Gu Du Xing, am alive, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion will always stand tall in the upper three heavens. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion will unify the upper three heavens and rule the martial world. If there is any disobedience, kill them without mercy. Mo Qinji's eyes were half closed. His voice was as cold as steel and as sharp as a knife. Yes. All the brothers were fired up. GMO, your mission, besides the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, is to improve your cultivation. Mo Qinji looked at GMO coldly. Big Brother gave you instructions before he left. You must walk the path yourself. No one else can help you. Luo Kadi and Xie Danqiong, the two of you are the same as GMO. Mo Qinji said coldly. Yes. The three of them agreed at the same time, if we can't meet Big Brother's requirements and expectations, we won't have the face to continue living in this world. Good. Mo Qianji said, Aosia Yun, your situation is a little special. He thought for a while and said, Chuyang once said that you have to walk half of your path by yourself. But the other half needs you to awaken your bloodline as soon as possible. Mo Qianji took a deep breath. You have to take out the dragon veins and treasures of the Ao clan as soon as possible to improve your own strength. You don't have much time left. You have to make the most of it. Yes. Ao Xieyin solemnly agreed. Also, Chuyang has always been worried about his junior brother, Tan Tan. This is also our goal from now on. Mo Qianji said, Tan Tan and Xie Dan Feng went missing in the incident a few days ago. We have to find them as soon as possible. If there is any news, inform the other brothers immediately. No matter what, I won't allow Chu Yang's junior brother to get hurt in the next 3 days. Yes. Everyone agreed. Mo Qianji, will always be the military advisor of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. I hope that everyone will cooperate with me in my plans. Yes. After Mo Qianji finished delegating, he looked at the water of the Lake of Death and said slowly, Strength. The most important thing is strength. Once you have enough strength, your wings will be full. We will carry Big Brother's wish and lead the Heavenly Armament Pavilion into the upper 3 heavens. At that time, we will fulfill Big Brother's wish to stand at the peak and laugh proudly at the heavens. We will carve Big Brother's name in the supreme position of the Heavenly Imperial Court. Yes. We will fulfill Big Brother's wish to stand at the peak and laugh proudly at the heavens. We will carve Big Brother's name in the supreme position of the Heavenly Imperial Court. The brothers shouted themselves hoarse. GMO and Luo Kudi could almost feel the blood in their bodies boiling. If I become a legend, you will definitely be a legend. If I become a legend, you will definitely be a legend. Big Brother, we brothers will fulfill your wish for you. Chapter 732. As the snow fell, the few of them stood like statues beside the Lake of Despair. They stood there quietly for a long time. Everyone felt unbearable pain in their hearts. They had unified the 3 heavens here. They had fulfilled the wishes of the various clans here. Chuyang had been planning and guiding all of this ever since he came to the 3 heavens. He had stirred up a storm and changed the situation of the 3 heavens. He came to the 3 heavens empty-handed. In a year the world had been turned upside down. But after he succeeded, he disappeared without a trace. He left all the fruits of his victory to his brothers. How could the few of them not feel as if their hearts were being cut by a knife? After a long time, let's go. Gu Duxing suddenly turned around and strode out. 2 drops of tears fell onto the ground at the same time as he turned around. The few of them turned around at the same time and walked down the mountain. Everyone walked slower and slower. Finally, when they were about to reach the bottom of the mountain, they all stopped in their tracks. They looked back. How they hoped that Chuyang could jump out and appear in front of everyone at this moment. But even when everyone's eyes were sore, there was still nothing. The wind slowly grew stronger. Snowflakes flew everywhere and made sounds on everyone's bodies. But the few of them stood there quietly and looked at the Lake of Despair that was covered in snowflakes. They didn't even blink. After a long time, Gu Duxing let out a long roar and flew up like a shooting star. He became one with his sword in midair and disappeared into the wind and snow in a flash. Only his long roar became louder and louder as he went further and further away. It resonated through the clouds and didn't stop for a long time. Mo Tianji waved his sleeves and went down the mountain without saying a word. Ao Shiyun and Xie Dan Xiong stood side by side and looked at each other for a long time. Finally they sighed deeply and went down the mountain together. GMO Luo Kudi and Huyan Albua stood at the entrance of the mountain. After a long time, GMO suddenly shouted with all his might, "Boss! We'll wait for you to come back." As soon as the words left his mouth, the cold wind flowed back into his mouth and turned into a whimper. The 3 of them stood there for a long time. Then a gust of wind and snow swept over and covered their figures. Not long after, Mo Tianji and the rest went down the mountain. With 2 whooshing sounds, 2 figures appeared as if they were riding on clouds. They silently flew into the Heavenly Sword Mountain from outer space. The 2 of them were like 2 illusions. They stood on the 2 stone tablets on the Lake of Despair, one on the left and the other on the right. Their eyes turned and their spiritual senses instantly covered the entire Sky Sword Peak. Nothing unusual. One of them said in a low voice. If there is no abnormality, then there is an abnormality, another person said coldly. That word should be calamity phenomenon. The first person said, Could it be that one of the calamities is under this lake? Very likely. The two of them looked at each other. Suddenly they waved their sleeves at the same time. With a whoosh, all the hot spring water in the lake of death surged up at the same time. It split into two halves and flew into the air. It was as if two walls of water had suddenly appeared in midair. Each of them was tens of thousands of feet tall and hundreds of feet wide. The lake of despair instantly dried up. There was not a single drop of water left. The flat ground below was exposed and there was nothing there. The two of them had actually dried up the entire lake of despair with a wave of their hands. What kind of heaven-shaking, earth-shattering divine technique was this? The two of them looked at the same time and saw a small pile of fine powder on the same spot. It is indeed the Calamity Sword Master, one of them said. But this Calamity Sword Master is obviously different. The other person's voice was still cold. The first person thought for a while and laughed. He is indeed different. The other person's eyes flashed and said, "This is the first one, right?" The first person seemed to think for a while and said, "Starting from the sword, this is the eighth one, right? Oh, we haven't returned for 10,000 years. This is the first one. It's about time." The first person smiled faintly and said, "Very soon we will have an opponent." The other person laughed softly and said, "I'm looking forward to it." The two of them turned and looked at the bottom of the lake at the same time. It was an extremely secluded place. At the bottom, there was a narrow passageway that emitted a faint, eerie fog. "It seems like this entrance is still fine. It's enough to support us." One of them sniffed and said, "Yes, a large number of heroes have died here in the past few days. That's how it is." The other person snorted and said, "As long as the entrance doesn't collapse, it's a good thing." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. They exerted strength in their feet and injected their divine senses into the stone statues beneath them. Then they retracted their hands and the two water walls in midair fell with a whoosh. They were so huge and heavy, but once they fell into the lake of despair, they didn't make a single sound. The lake water instantly filled up and there were no ripples. The two of them laughed and leaped up. They floated through the clouds as if they weren't affected by gravity at all. They flew out just like that. From afar, one of them laughed softly, the first Calamity Sword Master. "I'm looking forward to it." The voice disappeared. The 3 days finally came to an end. After losing Chu Yang's brothers seemed to have suddenly grown up and matured. The 3 days entered a period of unification. The Mo clan, Ao clan, Xia clan, Gu clan, Dong clan, Ji clan, and Luo clan completely took over the territories that originally belonged to the Meng clan, Tian clan, O clan, Zhao clan, Li clan, Tu clan, Black Devil clan, and so on. These few clans cooperated sincerely and started to rule the three heavens with an iron fist. The master of abacus and calculation Mo Tianji held great power in his hands. He cleaned up the entire three heavens. Other than the dark bamboo, all the other powers were wiped out. Those who didn't submit were quickly wiped out by the few clans. 3 days. After the chaos of the Jianghu, the world had entered a relatively peaceful era. At the same time, an organization called the Heavenly Ping Pavilion rose rapidly. Its members were very famous. The Solitary Sword Emperor, Gu Duxing. The Master of Abacus and Calculation, Mo Tianji. The Evil Duke Ao Xie Yun. The Viburnum Flower Xie Dan Qiong. The Lonely Swordsman Gmo. The Wolf Lord Luo Kadi. These few people seemed to advance together. They dominated the three heavens and laughed proudly in the martial world. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion's heavenly armament orders were everywhere. They were famous and unparalleled for a time. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion's strength was growing stronger by the day. It was developing at a speed that had never been seen before in the history of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. The few pavilion masters of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion rarely smiled. Every one of them seemed to be cast from the same mold. They were cold and unapproachable. Only, when someone broke through the bottleneck of his cultivation, at the peak of the Heavenly Sword Peak, there would be one or a few people standing in front of the Lake of Death for a long time. Or, there would be a few people who didn't know fatigue and jumped into the Lake of Death with a huge boulder. Then they would use all their strength to dive down. Although they had never succeeded, if someone calculated, they would realize that the frequency of this happening was very high. Almost every once in a while someone would appear there. And the person who appeared must have broken through. Moreover, the depth of their dive was also increasing with each dive. The upper three heavens. The upper three heavens was a mysterious world. It was completely different from the three heavens and the lower three heavens. The lower three heavens was a place where the empires fought for hegemony. It could be said that it was a vast land with abundant resources. Although the population of the upper three heavens was smaller, it was definitely not smaller than the lower three heavens in terms of size. The upper three heavens was 3 times the size of the lower three heavens and the upper three heavens combined. The lower three heavens was filled with schemes and wits. The upper three heavens was filled with iron and blood. However, in the upper three heavens, if there was only wits and no martial strength, one would definitely not be at the peak. If there was only martial strength and no wits, it would be even more difficult to advance. At the peak there was a huge ruling clan. Other than that, there were many other big powers. Each clan had their own territory. Various big sects were like bamboo shoots after the rain. Strange people were not rare. At the peak there were people who oversaw everything. This was a place with rules, organic chlorine, a foundation, traditions, culture and laws. This was a place with rules and regulations. It was like a place that combined all the characteristics of the lower three heavens and the upper three heavens. It was like adding oil and sauce to form a separate continent. There were only things that one could not imagine. Nothing did not exist. This was a colorful world. In the upper three heavens, there was a clear standard of good and evil. There was a clear code of conduct. Filial piety was the most important of all virtues. In the upper three heavens, the flat mountain ridge. Although this place was called the flat mountain ridge and seemed to be just a mountain ridge, it was actually a huge human gathering area. Just the flat mountain ridge included countless valleys, mountains, plains, and hills. The number of people living there was also hundreds of thousands of people. And the Chu clan, was one of the 3 big clans that dominated the flat mountain ridge. The Chu clan was not a super clan, nor was it one of the big dominant clans. However, the Chu clan's strength was also extremely powerful. The elder ancestor was in charge of the clan. There were countless experts in the clan. The 4 brothers of the Chu clan's direct bloodline were all dragons among men. Their cultivation was not ordinary. They were known as the 4 heroes of the Chu clan, the heroes of the flat mountain ridge. The 4 brothers' cultivation was superb, and their wits were outstanding. After the eldest brother, Chu Failing, married the youngest sister of the Yang clan from the Aspen Valley, the reputation of the Chu clan was even more powerful. However, the good times did not last long. In less than 2 years, the eldest brother of the Chu clan, Chu Failing, suddenly met with an accident. He was chased and fled with his wife, who had just given birth. After the chase, although the couple was lucky enough to escape, they lost their newborn child. From then on, Chu Failing was almost unable to recover from the setback. He rarely went out as if he was defeated by this tragic blow. The new leader of the Chu clan became the second brother of the Chu clan, Chu Failong. Chu Failong was both skillful and intelligent. In a short period of time he actually made the Chu clan, which had suffered a setback, rise again. This made everyone look at him in a different light. On this day, a horse carriage rushed into the gate of the Chu clan at lightning speed. Chu Failing, who had not appeared in front of others for a long time, actually drove the carriage himself. On his face there was both excitement and worry. It seemed that he was very anxious. When he reached the gate of the Chu clan, he did not stop and directly rushed in. Suddenly the Chu clan was in chaos. After a while there was a piece of news. The eldest grandson of the Chu clan, who had been missing for 10 years, was actually found. Today he returned to the clan. Chapter 733. In the study room of the Chu clan. The current clan master, Old Master Chu Xiongqing, was putting a map back to its original position. He sighed, "Flat Mountain Ridge is so big. How can it be united? Moreover, each of the 3 big clans is doing their own thing. Isn't this a joke? If the Chu clan forcefully conquers, the consequences will be unimaginable. It's not just 2 big clans." Old Master Chu sighed. His broken eyebrows were almost squeezed together. To Chu Xiongqing he was already satisfied that the Chu clan had been guarding the flat mountain ridge for generations. The Chu clan had grown stronger and stronger. Moreover, his descendants were all working hard now. It wouldn't be difficult for them to achieve great things in the future. As the clan master of the older generation, Chu Xiongqing was already very satisfied. As for the annexation of Flat Mountain Ridge, the Chu clan would be the only big clan and complete the mission of the big clans. Chu Xiongqing didn't even think about it. Since the world is stable, why should we kill each other when the 3 Stars Divine clan is still thriving? Everyone just wants to protect themselves and develop steadily. It's fine. Of course, Old Master Chu definitely didn't know that his eldest grandson had returned to the Chu clan. This king of Hell Chu overturned the entire lower 3 heavens and changed dynasties. With a wave of his hands, the lower 3 heavens changed. In just 2 years he had overturned 2 planes. Such scheming martial arts could be said to be unparalleled in the world. If Chu Xiongqing knew about this, he wouldn't care about the Chu clan's current problems. The problem was, he didn't know. Just as he was sighing, he suddenly heard a commotion from afar. It seemed like someone was shouting, yelling and running around. The entire Chu clan was like a pot of boiling water. Old Master Chu frowned. He pushed open the window and shouted, "What's the matter?" "It's a mess. Why is there a ghost in broad daylight?" Old Master Chu was born in the pugilistic world. Although he had studied for a few days, he still felt that there were too many twists and turns in the minds of scholars. Therefore he looked down on them. A guard was scared out of his wits and threw him over. "Clan Master is back." "So what if he's back? What's so great about that?" Chu Xiongqing said angrily, "Are you all hoping that he won't come back? What's so shocking? This old man thought you had seen a ghost." No. It's..." The guard was sweating profusely. "The problem is that you didn't come back alone? He came back with young mistress?" Chu Xiongqing's broken eyebrows twitched and he almost wanted to jump out of the window. "Bastard! If he doesn't come back with your young mistress, is he going to find a mistress? Does he have the guts to do that when he sees his wife?" The guard's face was full of black lines. Did he bring back the young master who had been missing for 10 years? "What do you mean missing for 10 years? Chu Xiongqing only said half a sentence. Suddenly he widened his eyes and gasped for breath. You brat. What did you say?" Suddenly he jumped out of the window and grabbed the guard's neck. "Say it again." "Yes, the eldest young master who has been missing for 10 years has been found." The guard's expression was very pitiful, and his voice sounded like a chicken being slaughtered. His neck was choked and his feet were off the ground. "Fuck! Why didn't you say so earlier?" Chu Xiongqing said angrily, "At the boss's place? I'll go take a look." Just as the guard nodded, old Master Chu had already disappeared. The guard fell to the ground and coughed a few times with his hands on his throat. Finally he rolled his eyes and got up. "I still wanted to get some reward, but I didn't expect to be beaten up. Damn it." While he was muttering to himself, a white glowing object suddenly flew back and hit him on the back of his head. He was immediately knocked to the ground and a visible bump appeared on his head. Old Master Chu's voice came from afar. "I'll reward you with a piece of white crystal, haha." The guard touched his unicorn-like head and wanted to cry. "I'd rather you didn't reward me." The Chu clan was in an uproar. The so-called direct bloodline. What was the direct bloodline? According to the rules of the clan, it was passed down to the elder and not the younger generation. The eldest grandson was the true direct bloodline in the traditional sense of the clan. Other than that, there was nothing else. Chu Xiongqing's eldest grandson was Chu Feiling. Chu Feiling's eldest grandson. He only had one son. In other words, the true direct bloodline of the Chu clan was only this one. Of course, if Chu Feilong or other brothers took over, it would be a different story. Chu Xiongqing had been worried about this. If the eldest grandson didn't take over, and the second grandson took over, this would be a sign of chaos in the clan. Now, when he heard that his eldest grandson had suddenly returned, how could old Master Chu not be excited? Chu Feiling's small courtyard was already full of people. Everyone in the Chu clan was gathering here. The fourth son of the Chu clan, Chu Fian, landed. His eyes were brimming with tears. "Damn it, I've been searching for 18 years. Now I've finally come to an end. In the future I'll be free." He rushed in like a gust of wind. Big brother, I heard that you found the little brat?" Once he entered, he was shocked by the heavy atmosphere in the room. Chu Feiling raised his head with bloodshot eyes. "Yes, I found him." Sigh. He sighed. Unexpectedly, there was unspeakable sorrow in his voice. "What happened?" Chu Fian was stunned. "He's injured and unconscious." Chu Feiling rubbed his temples. Chu Fian was dumbfounded. He naturally knew what Chu Feiling meant by unconscious. If even Chu Feiling had such an expression, then the Chu clan might not be able to do anything. If there was a little hope, Chu Feiling wouldn't be so sad. "Where is he? Where's my grandson?" Old Master Chu Xiongqing suddenly appeared with a loud roar. "Inside." Chu Fian stretched out his hand. Before Chu Feiling could stop him, old Master Chu had already rushed in. "Wah, a little brat, why aren't you kowtowing? Grandpa has a big gift." Chu Xiongqing was in high spirits. All these years he had suffered a lot from his in-laws, but he couldn't refute them. Now that he heard that someone from the Yang clan was here, old Master Chu immediately ran away. regardless of whether it was an elder or a young one. Now that his grandson was back, it meant that all his worries were gone. However, before he could finish his sentence, his words were suddenly stuck in his throat. What's going on? Old Master Chu stood in front of the bed in a daze. Half of Yang Ruolan's body was on the bed, and she held her son in her arms. She raised her head reluctantly and smiled. Father-in-law is here. What's wrong? Chu Xiongqing looked at the young man on the bed and stretched his neck. Injured, unconscious. Yang Ruolan sighed softly. It's already the next day. This? Old Master Chu suddenly trembled. Don't tell me. Halfway through his sentence he almost wanted to slap himself. If there's hope to save him, why would my daughter-in-law act like this? He couldn't help but sigh. He glanced sideways and saw a dazzling purple light. Isn't this the purple crystal jade essence? In the unconscious son's palm, a ray of purple light shone out. In his palm there was a piece of purple crystal. Chu Xiongqing's heart trembled. He gently took son's hand and wanted to take out the purple crystal to take a look. However, although Chu Yang was unconscious, his hand was tightly clenched and he couldn't take it out. If he wanted to take it out, he would have to break all 5 of his fingers. He seems to know that this is the only hope for him to acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan. He actually refuses to let go. Yang Ruolan's tears flowed down. My poor child. Ah. Chu Xiongqing sighed. He stood rooted to the ground and stared blankly for a while. Then he walked out. I'll ask the elder if there's any way. If there's really no way, I'll personally make a trip to the Medicine Valley. Yang Ruolan's eyes brightened and she said, Thank you, eunuch. Chu Xiongqing sighed. What are you thanking me for? He's your son, but isn't he my eldest grandson? Don't tell me that I feel better in my heart? At this moment, a clear voice was heard from outside. Big brother, congratulations. I heard that my eldest nephew has finally been found. Ah, this is a joyous occasion for our clan. It was the second son of the Chu clan, Chu Feilong. Chu Feilong's voice was filled with gratification and blessings from the bottom of his heart. He seemed to have finally heaved a sigh of relief. The heavens have taken pity on us. My eldest nephew has been gone for 18 years. Now we're finally reunited. The Chu clan finally has a successor. Sister-in-law, you can finally rest assured. This is really worth celebrating. When Chu Feilong arrived, the 100 or so people in front of Chu Feiling's door suddenly dispersed. Their gazes were evasive and their footsteps were light. It was as if they had seen a monster. Chu Feiling and Chu Feiyan, who were inside, both frowned. In the inner chamber, Yang Ruolan also frowned. She seemed to be about to flare up, but she only sighed in the end. Chu Xiongqing's face turned black. Everyone could tell that Chu Feilong's words were from the bottom of his heart. It was as if he was giving his blessings wholeheartedly. However, his words were too hurtful. The Chu clan finally has a successor. Sister-in-law, you can finally rest assured. This sentence had a profound meaning. Chu Feiling had a son, and Chu Feilong had more than one. Since when did the Chu clan not have a successor? Even the third brother, Chu Feihan, had a daughter. As for the next sentence, sister-in-law, you can finally rest assured, it was as if Yang Ruolan and Chu Feiling were determined to take over the position of the eldest grandson. Chu Feiyan's face changed slightly. He raised his head and looked at his eldest brother and second brother. Suddenly he felt a surge of undercurrents. He thought, what's wrong? Second brother seems a little abnormal today. Second brother, thank you for your concern. Chu Feiling smiled faintly and said. This sentence also had a double meaning. Chu Feilong smiled gently and said worriedly, but I wonder how my eldest nephew is now. Eldest brother, can I go in and take a look? Chu Feiling stepped aside. Second brother, please go ahead. We're brothers from the same mother. As his second uncle, it's natural for you to take a look at your nephew. After all, we haven't seen each other for 18.5 years. Chapter 734. Chu Feilong laughed and stepped into the room. He said, Sister-in-law, Feilong is here to visit. Before entering the inner room, he had to inform her first. After all, Big Brother's inner room was sister-in-law's territory. Come in. Chu Xiongqing shouted angrily. Chu Feilong was stunned. He didn't expect his father to be here first. He even made a face at Chu Feiling and Chu Fian. He complained softly, the two of you are really something. You know that old master is here, but you still let me take the thunder. After he finished speaking, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. Chu Feiling sighed in his heart. Chu Fian's doubts were swept away. He laughed and said, Second brother is really unlucky this time, Chu Feiling snorted. When Chu Feilong entered the inner room, he saw two pairs of eyes staring at him. He couldn't help but shrink his neck. He laughed awkwardly. Father, sister-in-law, you bastard. Chu Xiongqing was furious, but he couldn't vent his anger. After all, it was fine if you understood Chu Feilong's words as a form of concern. However, if you misunderstood it, it was fine. Especially as the clan master, he couldn't say such things casually. Once he made a mistake, it would be too late for him to cry. This is my nephew, right? Chu Feilong took a step forward and looked at Chu Yang, who was on the bed. He took a light breath and said, "You're indeed a talent. Sai, it's a pity. Father, do you have any good ideas?" Chu Xiongqing said angrily, "If I had any ideas, would I still be sitting here like this? Are you fucking slapping my face?" Chu Feilong smiled apologetically. "I don't know how to speak." Chu Xiongqing snorted. Suddenly, Chu Feilong thought for a while and said, "Sister-in-law, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." Yang Ruolin stroked her nephew's hair and said lightly, "Say it." Chu Feilong smiled embarrassedly and said, "Sister-in-law, this, nephew, I don't know if you've verified it before. Cough cough, I don't mean anything else. It's just that our Chu clan is big and it's inevitable that there will be imposters. Cough cough. I'm just saying it casually." However, his words immediately made Chu Xiongqing raise his guard. Only then did the old man remember that he had been too happy to ask this important question. If he mistook Feng Jing for Ma Liang, and brought someone else's child home, making a fool of himself was a small matter, but would the Chu family's foundation fall into someone else's hands? After taking a closer look, Chu Xiongqing said suspiciously, "Second brother, I think this child isn't fake. Look, he looks so much like your eldest brother when he was in his teens." Chu Feilong smiled bitterly, "Father, looks alike. Every child that the Chu clan has brought back in the past 18 years looks like Big Brother when he was young. The most important thing is the verification of the bloodline." "Father, I remember that there is a way." "Not bad." Chu Xiongqing immediately said, "I remember that old Yang told me about a method called blood of the tongue, purple crystal hum? This can't be faked." Chu Feilong clapped his hands and said excitedly, "Isn't this the purple crystal? Let's give it a try. Won't the truth be out then?" Yang Ruolan's face turned as cold as ice. She said slowly, "Eunuch and second brother, are you saying that we should take out this piece of purple crystal jade essence now, and then take the blood of this child's tongue to verify his identity?" Chu Feilong said sincerely, "Sister-in-law, I know that this matter is really difficult for you. Everyone has sons and daughters. A child is like a piece of flesh that has fallen from the mother's body. How can we not feel heartache? Not to mention taking the blood of the tongue, even if it's just a little bit of flesh, as a parent, our hearts will feel as if it's being cut by a knife." He paused for a while and continued earnestly, "But now we have to verify my nephew's identity. You have to know. From a young age, no matter whether it's the figure or appearance, there are many changes. Who knows what a child will look like when he grows up? But no matter what, the bloodline can't be changed." Chu Feilong took a deep breath, and his expression suddenly became solemn. "If sister-in-law trusts me, I'll do this personally. I'll naturally reduce my nephew's pain to the minimum. I'm sure of this." Chu Feilong's words were sincere and his voice was filled with emotion. His voice and his sincerity moved Chu Xiongqing. He stroked his beard and said, "These words make sense." "I don't agree." Yang Ruolan said sternly, "The child is unconscious now. How can he bear such pain? Furthermore, he's holding the purple crystal jade essence tightly in his hand. We can't take it out at all. If we want to take it out by force, we'll have to break his fingers. How can we do that?" She said indignantly, "The child values the purple crystal jade essence so much. Isn't this enough to prove it? Moreover, a mother's heart is linked. When I saw him, I knew that he was my son. Don't tell me this is also a lie?" Chu Xiongqing stroked his beard and muttered, "These words make sense." Chu Feilong smiled calmly and said, "Sister-in-law, you're overthinking. And your words are too serious. How dare Feilong question his sister-in-law? But, sister-in-law, if you put yourself in my shoes, you've lost your child for 18.5 years. Such a long time. How can you say that a child is your son when you see him?" He smiled bitterly and said, "Then you insist on the family's agreement? Ah, isn't this a little too childish?" He paused for a moment before continuing, "Besides, extracting the blood from the tip of the tongue isn't a big deal at all. It's just a simple prick of the needle, and it's done before anyone even realizes it. As for his finger, Chu Fei Long frowned and said in an arrogant voice, "How can a man not bleed in this chaotic world? Who doesn't get hurt? For a few pieces of purple crystals and white crystals, they can even turn the world upside down and leave corpses everywhere. What's more, this is an important matter for the heir of a big family. It's just 5 fingers, but they can prove his bloodline. Even if they're broken, so what? Moreover, Luang's injury isn't unrecoverable. The Chu family has many miraculous medicines. As long as it's proven that he's my eldest nephew, we'll not only treat his injuries, but also provide him with all our resources for his cultivation. We'll hope that he'll achieve something soon and bring glory to our ancestors. But if it's proven that he's not of our Chu family's bloodline, then, what's the point of losing his 5 fingers?" He laughed coldly. "Not only his 5 fingers, even the rest of his bones will be broken and interrogated. Who came up with such an idea to destroy our Chu family's bloodline so effortlessly?" Chu Fei Ling and Chu Fei Yen had already quietly entered the room and were listening to these words. It had to be said that Chu Fei Long's words were reasonable. From the big and small points, strengths and weaknesses, as well as the distance and near, they were all considered. It was impeccable. Chu Fian recognized Chu Yang. But at this moment, Chu Fei Long, Yang Ruolan and Chu Xiongcheng were all covered up and couldn't see them. When he heard Chu Fei Long's words, he couldn't help but agree. Second brother's words make sense. Chu Fei Ling suddenly turned his head and glared at him angrily. Yang Ruolan laughed coldly and said resolutely, "No matter what you say, I won't agree. This is my son. I'll fight with whoever dares to touch him." Old Master Chu Xiongcheng frowned and persuaded, "Ruolan, look at this matter. Since you're so confident, we're only going to verify his identity. Don't tell me that we don't even have the right to verify the identity of our Chu family's grandson?" Yang Ruolan said blankly, "We need to verify his identity, but not now. If we don't want to verify his identity now, we'll have to break my son's 5 fingers. I won't allow that. If we really want to verify his identity, then we'll have to wait until my son wakes up." Chu Fei Long's eyes flashed and he said, "What if he doesn't wake up?" "Then we'll wait." Yang Ruolan said resolutely, "We'll wait until he wakes up." "Ah, sister-in-law. What's your intention for delaying time like this?" Chu Fei Long took a breath and said solemnly, "Time is the most precious thing. 2 hours can destroy a clan. 3 days and 3 nights is enough to change a dynasty." He sighed softly, "Sister-in-law, if we continue to delay, who knows where the crisis will be?" Upon hearing this, Chu Xiongqing and Chu Fian were both shocked and moved. Although the Chu clan was one of the 3 superpowers in the flat mountain ridge, the 3 superpowers were in turmoil now for unknown reasons. They heard that it was because of the Tribulation Sword Master, and that the higher-ups had made arrangements. The next step for the flat mountain ridge was to unify. At such a time, the 3 superpowers were willing to do anything. And Chu Fei Ling had found his son at such a critical juncture? How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Chu Fei's face was solemn and worried, but he was laughing coldly in his heart. Yang Ruolin already had 1 foot in her trap. After he received the news, he didn't make any moves on the surface, but secretly started to investigate. He soon found out that Chu Yang was holding onto the purple crystal jade essence tightly. So when he came personally and saw Chu Yang holding onto the purple crystal jade essence, he was even more determined. In fact, when he saw Chu Yang, who looked almost the same as his elder brother when he was young, he had already confirmed that this was true. But he couldn't admit it. Not only could he not admit it, but this was also an important time to attack Chu Fei Ling. Once he missed this opportunity, he might regret it for life. As long as Yang Ruolan left the Chu clan with her son, Chu Fei Ling's father-in-law, who was a powerful helper, would be half destroyed. So he insisted on verifying the identity of his son. He understood what a loving mother meant. Her son, who had been missing for 18 years, had returned to her side and was unconscious. Which mother would be so cruel as to break her son's 5 fingers to verify his identity at such a time? She would rather die than do that. So, as long as you don't agree, I have my ways. What I'm afraid of is that you're willing. Yang Ruolan said coldly and resolutely, "No matter what, whoever dares to touch my son will have to step over my dead body first." Chu Fei Ling's body shook and he said hoarsely, "Ruolan." Yang Ruolan tilted her head and stubbornly ignored him. Chu Fei Long shook his head and sighed. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he whispered, "Sister-in-law, this matter can't be arranged by the Yang clan?" Chapter 735. The King of Hell wakes up. Yang Ruolan squinted her eyes. "What do you mean?" Chu Fei Long sighed and said, This is a matter that concerns the future of our Chu clan. Sister-in-law, why do you insist on stopping us? He suddenly said with grief and indignation. Sister-in-law, what are your intentions? You insist that this is your son. We want to verify his identity and ensure the purity of his bloodline, but you're obstructing us again. You're even threatening us with your life just to verify his identity. Chu Fei Long shook his head and sighed. His face was solemn. I really don't want to suspect you, sister-in-law. Chu Xiongcheng and Chu Fei Yen lowered their heads as they heard this. Chu Fei Long's words were reasonable and logical. Everyone couldn't help but think too much about it. In the eyes of men, even if they had to lose an arm to prove their innocence, they wouldn't hesitate to do so. What's more, it's just 5 fingers. In the Jianghu, who hadn't paid a price that was more serious than these 5 fingers. For the Chu clan to be able to stand in the upper 3 heavens, how many people had died, let alone 5 fingers? But they didn't realize how cruel it was to break the fingers of a mother who owed 18 years of debt to her son in front of her. Chu Fei Long made use of the iron-blooded indifference of the people in the martial world and the feelings of a mother who was full of guilt. He knew that even if Yang Ruolan died, she wouldn't allow anyone to touch a single strand of her son's hair. That's why he provoked her so unscrupulously. Moreover, he was acting like a loyal and righteous person, justifying his coercion. Chu Fei Long. You're too much. Chu Fei Ling stepped forward and said angrily, How dare you speak to your sister-in-law like this? I'm sorry, big brother. Chu Fei Long's face was solemn and helpless. Please believe me. I don't want to suspect my sister-in-law more than anyone else. But you're still suspicious. Chu Fei Ling said angrily, You don't believe your sister-in-law, but do you believe my words? I've said that this is my son. My only son. He's the descendant whom the Chu clan owes 18 years of debt. Is that enough? Not enough. Chu Fei Long straightened his back and said frankly, Big brother, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just that I'm more convinced that the blood of the tip of the tongue and the hum of the amethyst, that is the bloodline that has been recognized since birth. His eyes were filled with guilt as he said, Big brother, I know that you and sister-in-law can't bear to part with her, but how can this kind of thing be taken lightly? Love is long, but the heroic spirit is short. If there's really such a scheme, then it's a small matter for our Chu clan to become a laughing stock. It's a huge matter if we end up giving away all the blood and sweat that our ancestors have sacrificed for us. As he said till here, Chu Fei Long's face was full of pain. He suddenly stood up and took 2 steps back. He tidied his clothes and knelt down. He said with a sorrowful face, Big brother, please be ruthless, for the sake of our Chu clan. Sister-in-law, even if I'm being unreasonable today, please show me the evidence. For the sake of the Chu clan, for the sake of the clan, for the sake of Sun Wandai, and for the sake of the blood of our ancestors. Chu Fei Long knelt down. His tears actually dripped down, but he didn't even blink. He shouted painfully, Big brother. Sister-in-law. Please, grant me my wish. Everyone was shocked when Chu Fei Long knelt down. Old Master Chu Xiongcheng looked at his second son with a complicated expression. There were some tears in his eyes, but there was also a trace of relief. A man should have gold under his knees. If he wasn't forced to the extreme, how could Chu Fei Long, the current head of the Chu clan, be so compromising and kneel on the ground? It could be seen that Chu Fei Long was loyal to his clan. He valued the inheritance of his bloodline even more. For the Chu clan to have such a grandson, it was enough to comfort their ancestors. Chu Fei Yen stood by one side. This upright 4th son of the Chu clan was also deeply moved by Chu Fei Long at this moment. He couldn't help but say, Big brother. Chu Fei Ling gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He was well aware of Chu Fei Long's intentions. He had always known that his second brother was cunning and sly. But he really didn't expect Chu Fei Long to be able to do things to such an extent. In front of Chu Xiongcheng, Chu Fei Yen and Chu Fei Long, Chu Fei Ling didn't have any way out. There was no way out. Chu Fei Long. How are you? You're so vicious. Chu Fei Ling almost vomited blood. Chu Fei Long knelt down. His face was full of loyalty. He looked straight into Chu Fei Ling's eyes and said sorrowfully, Big brother, if you don't agree, I will kneel here until I die. His voice was fierce and resolute. Chu Xiongcheng sighed, Fei Ling, your second brother has already knelt down in front of you. What else do you want? Don't tell me, you really want him to die? Chu Fei Ling suddenly turned back and looked at his father with grief and indignation. He said sorrowfully, Father, don't say any more. Let me ask you, your second brother, didn't he do it for our Chu clan? For our clan? Isn't it for you? What else do you want? Chu Xiongqing shouted. Chu Feiling trembled. Father, this poor child has been abandoned by us for 18 years. 18 years. He screamed. For 18 years we didn't do anything for him. How did he grow up? It's really tough. Now that he's finally returned to the clan, he's going to cut off his fingers. He screamed. Father, how can you bear to do this? He's your grandson. Chu Xiongqing sighed and his eyes became wet. Chu Feilong knelt on the ground and said resolutely, Big brother, it's too early to say the words grandson. Before we verify his identity, who can be sure that he's my grandson? He raised his head and said loudly, Of course, if we verify his identity, he's indeed the descendant of our Chu clan. Then we'll compensate him in the future. We'll get whatever we want. But if not, our Chu clan can't afford to lose face like this and can't bear such a loss. Big brother, can you stop being so muddle-headed? Brother, I'm begging you. Shut up. Chu Feiling said angrily. Chu Feilong, don't think that the tricks you've played all these years? He was furious and was about to say everything. Enough. Yang Ruolan suddenly interrupted him. She looked at Chu Feilong, Chu Feiyan and Chu Xiongqing. After that, she looked away and looked at her son lovingly. Her gaze was extremely gentle and resolute. She knew that although the two of them knew that Chu Feilong was the one who did all those things, they didn't have any evidence at all. If Chu Feiling said it now, he would definitely be blamed by Chu Feilong. In that case, once a conflict broke out, Chu Feilong's fingers would definitely be cut off with Chu Xiongqing present. She took a deep breath and her voice calmed down. I just want to ask the Chu family, is it necessary to carry out the bloodline test today? The Chu clan. Yang Ruolan had already proven her determination by saying these words. For her son, she would rather not be a member of the Chu clan. Of course. Absolutely. Sister-in-law, please fulfill my wish. Chu Feilong said sternly. He had waited so long for this moment. How could he give up this opportunity just because of Yang Ruolan's words? Naturally, he blocked her way out. All right. Yang Ruolan smiled gently. She said calmly, Since the Chu clan can't tolerate my son, I'll take him away. Aren't you afraid that my son is fake? As long as I take him away, it won't matter if he's real or fake, right? Where are you going? Chu Feiling was shocked. Ruolan, don't be rash. Yang Ruolan shook her head calmly. I'm not rash. I'm leaving here to return to the Yang clan. She lowered her head and looked at her son's face. She said slowly, You won't let him take the surname Chu, but I can let him take the surname Yang. Chu Feilong heaved a sigh of relief secretly and said, Sister-in-law, why do you have to do this for such a simple matter? At this moment, a voice suddenly said, Yes, why do you have to do this for such a simple matter? Everyone heard Chu Feilong's words. Naturally, they knew that he was the one who said this. However, the second voice was unfamiliar to everyone. This voice was very calm and indifferent. Furthermore, it was filled with disdain and arrogance. The voice was clear, but every word was enunciated clearly. Furthermore, this voice was filled with weakness. He seemed to be out of breath, which made people who heard him couldn't help but worry that he wouldn't have the strength to continue after saying the first word. However, he said every word clearly. Although he was weak, he said it in one breath. The only strange thing was that no one had heard this voice before. Everyone was stunned. Even Yang Ruolan and Chu Feiling were stunned. An instant later, everyone turned their heads at the same time and looked at the unconscious youth on the bed. He had already opened his eyes. He didn't seem to have any strength, but his eyes were as clear as autumn water. Everyone was dumbstruck. Chu Yang. Everyone argued for a long time. They all had the same thought, this fellow won't wake up. But at this moment, this little one had unexpectedly woken up. Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolan were overjoyed when he woke up. However, Chu Feilong, who was kneeling on the ground, seemed to have lost his mind. This was such a heaven-sent opportunity. At the last moment, this fellow's words caused such a huge change. Their efforts were all for naught? Chu Yang raised his hand with difficulty. The purple crystal jade essence in his palm landed on the bed. He tried his best to smile and said weakly, Since then it's only right to verify my identity, otherwise, I would be too embarrassed to stay here. Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect this fellow to be so reasonable when he woke up. His body was as weak as cotton. Chu Yang coughed a few times and said weakly, As a brother of the Chu clan, how can I not verify my identity? A cold light flashed in his eyes, but because his head was lowered, no one saw it. He coughed a few times and said weakly, "This? Second uncle, I don't know if your sons have all been tested?" Chapter 736. Chu Yang had been walking on a tightrope. A huge amount of heaven and earth origin energy surged out from the sword guard. An endless amount of divine spirit energy attacked his mind from the soul of the first tribulation swordmaster that he had devoured. This huge amount of divine spirit energy pushed Chu Yang to the brink of collapse thousands of times in these few days. It was as if he was walking on a tightrope at the speed of a turtle on a cliff covered with ice and snow. Furthermore, the tightrope was slippery because of the ice and snow. If he wasn't careful, he would be smashed into pieces. He didn't even know how long he had been unconscious for. Until there was a period of time when he felt as if he was in a warm embrace. It was a kind of happiness that was close to a baby's death. He was surrounded by his mother's aura. It was the warmth of a dream that he had yearned for 2 lifetimes. This feeling made him relax a lot. From then on, his progress gradually stabilized, until today he suddenly felt that the warm aura suddenly became violent and angry, as if it was filled with pain. This feeling made the unconscious Chu Yang wake up a little. Although it wasn't the best time for Chu Yang to wake up, he almost forced himself to wake up. When he woke up and regained some consciousness, Chu Yang felt that his eyelids were as heavy as a mountain. He felt weak all over, as if he was paralyzed. His body seemed to be floating in the water, but also seemed to be floating in the sky. He couldn't calm down for a long time. There were only vague yet clear words that drilled into his ears, one sentence after another. Sentence after sentence, clear yet ethereal, as if he was talking in a dream. After a long time, Chu Yang finally understood. Could it be that he had returned to the Chu clan? What was going on? He didn't have time to think about anything. He only heard people talking more and more fiercely. The matter had already reached the point of no return. Feeling his mother's sadness and anger, Chu Yang opened his eyes recklessly. "This second uncle, I don't know if your sons have all been tested?" Chu Yang's words were earth-shattering. "Me? What do I need to test?" Chu Fei Long was stunned. He subconsciously said, "My children aren't lost." Chu Yang smiled weakly. He forced himself to be alert and quickly changed the topic. "It's just that. I don't know, what are the conditions for testing? How can I do that?" Chu Xiongqing looked at the weak young man who was lying on the bed. His gaze was complicated, filled with love and calmness. After a long while, he said, "The key is the purple crystal jade essence in your hands." He sighed deeply. Back then, Rulan's father obtained the purple crystal jade essence. He split it into 2 pieces and asked a friend to help him make 2 jade pendants. One of the pieces was made by using your own blood from the tip of your tongue to break into the jade essence to form the word, Chu. If it's really you, I'll extract a drop of blood from the tip of your tongue and pour it into the purple crystal jade essence. When it overlaps with the Chu character, it will naturally fuse and the Chu character will turn golden. That is to verify his identity. Chu Xiongqing said slowly. "Father is right. That's exactly the case." Chu Fei Long nodded his head and looked at Chu Yang. He said kindly, "Young man, you must know that the purity of the clan's bloodline is related to the inheritance of the clan. Don't harbor any resentment." "I am very cooperative." Chu Yang said weakly, "I'm more eager than anyone to acknowledge my ancestors and have a family. I've been longing for 10 years. Hearing this, Yang Rulan's eyes were filled with tears again. She almost wanted to hug her son tightly and kiss him to her heart's content. Purple crystal jade essence should be something that everyone in the Chu clan can use, right? Chu Yang coughed and said, "Because, after all, it contains the blood of a descendant of the Chu clan. As long as you're from the Chu clan, you should be able to use it and there shouldn't be any conflicts." Theoretically, that's the case. Chu Xiongqing touched his beard and faintly felt that Chu Yang's words had other intentions, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Chu Yang couldn't possibly want to stir up any trouble right after he returned, right? Chu Yang panted weakly and said hurriedly, "Then what are you waiting for? Isn't it just a drop of blood? Let's start quickly. I can't wait." Chu Fei Long twitched his mouth in disdain. This country bumpkin seems to have been leaping for a long time. No wonder he's so impatient. Ever since Chu Yang opened his mouth, the 4th son of the Chu clan, Chu Fei Yen, was stunned. Others really hadn't heard this voice before, but Chu Fei Yen had heard it more than once. Is really this little one? Chu Fei Yen wanted to groan out loud. The king of hell whose name shook the lower 3 heavens. Chu Fei Yan's face became distorted. If others knew that he had already found him more than a year ago, but didn't have any concrete evidence and didn't bring him back. He had actually dragged on for more than a year. If father, sister-in-law, and elder brother knew, he would definitely not be able to keep his skin and flesh. It would be a miracle if he wasn't skinned alive. Furthermore, if the elder knew that he had done such a thing, he would probably be punished even more severely. He might even be punished to face the wall for decades. That wouldn't be strange at all. The entire clan was looking forward to it. You've already found him, yet you still dragged on for more than a year and a half? What kind of a bastard was this? Therefore, Chu Feiyan lowered his head and shrank to one side the moment Chu Yang opened his mouth. He thought to himself, if there's really light, then how can I erase this matter? It seems that the root of the problem is still this little one. Under everyone's gaze, Yang Ruolan used her trembling hand to hold a thin needle and gently pricked the tip of Chu Yang's tongue. A drop of red blood seeped out. Chu Xiongqing waved his hand and that drop of blood flew out from the tip of Chu Yang's tongue and landed on the purple crystal jade essence. Immediately after, Old Master Chu suddenly let out a hess sound. His entire body was covered in white light. He had already activated his divine technique to control this drop of blood and imprinted it on the Chu character between the purple crystal jade essence. He originally thought that this would require a lot of strength. However, he didn't expect that the drop of blood would seep in almost instantaneously before he could exert any strength. In the next moment, the drop of blood seemed to have its own consciousness as it climbed onto the Chu word. Then, without any warning, the Chu word suddenly shone brightly and turned into a bright golden color. Around the Chu character on the jade essence, a ring of purple light soared, appearing extremely majestic. Then, a line of small words suddenly appeared in this circle of light. Everyone looked at it. Blood on the tip of the tongue, soul of the purple crystal, the bloodline of the Chu clan, confirmed. The heavenly precision technique is unquestionable. These 24 words were as thin as a strand of hair, but the strokes were clear. They naturally carried a sense of arrogance. It's him. It's definitely him. In the inner chamber, everyone exclaimed in surprise, including Chu Feilong. His expression now seemed to be that of surprise from the bottom of his heart. Child, it's been hard on you. Chu Xiongqing cried and hugged Chu Yang in his arms. Chu Yang hissed and exhaled, gently, gently, my bones are about to break. His entire body was weak now, just like cotton. After being hugged by Old Master Chu, his bones were almost fractured. Old Master Chu then realized, oh. He hurriedly let go of him. Although they were already prepared, Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolan were still shocked by this huge surprise. In that instant, they felt that their hearts were beating like drums and almost jumped out of their throats. The two of them stood there in a daze. For a moment they couldn't even move. My son. It's really my son. Now there was no longer any doubt. Even Chu Feilong didn't have any reason now. Congratulations, elder sister-in-law. Congratulations, elder brother. Chu Feilong and Chu Feiyan congratulated at the same time. Their voices were sincere, but which one was sincere and which one was fake? It was worth pondering over. The entire room seemed to be filled with a jubilant atmosphere. The hostility from before seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Chu Feilong naturally hoped that this matter would pass just like this. He was very depressed now. He had painstakingly built up everything, but it was all gone just like that. How depressed was he? As for Chu Xiongqing, Old Master naturally didn't want any more twists and turns. After all, they were all from the same clan and they were all his sons. Old Master didn't want to see any unhappiness. Yang Ruolan and Chu Feiling only wanted to chase them away at this moment. Son, I haven't hugged you properly yet. This was a good time to talk. However, some people didn't want this matter to pass just like that. My identity has been verified? Chu Yang panted weakly, and there was a sense of grief and indignation in his voice. Good boy, it's been verified, it's been verified. You're my good grandson. I'll be the first to tear apart anyone who dares to say otherwise. Chu Xiongqing hurriedly assured and comforted him. His old eyes were still a little red. Poor child. He is so loyal, honest, polite, and sensible. That's great. Then I'm the Chu clan's eldest grandson? Chu Yang's voice was weak, but he persisted in asking. It was as if he would faint after asking this question. Of course. Old Master Chu Xiongqing gave the final word. That's great. If that's the case, then call the daughters of second uncle, third uncle, fourth uncle, and so on. Let's test them. Chu Yang let out a long sigh of relief and said in a comforting manner. He said it very briskly as if he was saying, Aya, after holding it in for so long, I can finally take a piss. Feels so good. Come and take a piss too. It was so normal, however, everyone was stunned. Test? What? Old Master Chu was a little dizzy. Grandfather. I'm thinking for the clan. Our Chu clan's bloodline must be pure. For the thousands of years of blood and life of our ancestors. For the purity of our descendants for thousands of years. Chu Yang's voice was so weak that it seemed as if he was about to stop breathing. However, his voice was full of righteousness. His loyal and devoted heart could illuminate the sun and the moon. He said resolutely and decisively, for the clan, for the inheritance, we must test it. This. Old Master Chu was in a difficult position. There's no need for that, right? Chu Fei Long smiled and said, Nephew, my family situation is different from yours. Your brothers have never gone missing. Chapter 737. Chu Yang's face was full of loyalty and honesty. He even looked a little silly, as he said this. His heart was filled with hatred. Damn it, why would I care about your second uncle? You're obviously up to no good. How dare you bully my mother like this? Damn it, if I don't play with you today, I'd rather not be surnamed Chu. I'll follow my mother's surname Yang. From today onwards I'll be called Yang. Minister Chu was furious, but on the surface he looked honest and loyal with an innocent face. However, the moment Chu Yang's words left his mouth, everyone in the room was startled. Old Master Chu Xiongqing opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he couldn't. Finally, he closed his mouth and shook his head. Damn it, I was still praising him just now. I felt that this grandson of mine was very sensible and loyal. I didn't expect him to detonate a bomb with his next sentence. Furthermore, this bomb wasn't an ordinary one. He's really a troublemaker. On the first day he acknowledged his ancestors, he had already offended all three of his uncles. Chu Feiling's face turned black and he turned his head away. Yang Ruolan's face was calm and her heart was comforted. You dare to bully me? I have a son to stand up for me. Chu Feilong, let's see what you're going to do this time. It's so satisfying. You wanted to break my son's finger just now, but my son made you a cuckold the moment he opened his eyes. You're really quick to repay your debt. Awesome. Chu Feilong's square and dignified face instantly turned purple. No matter how well-mannered he was, he couldn't tolerate such words. This was the greatest humiliation for a man. He said angrily, Big nephew, what do you mean by this? Chu Yang put on an honest smile and said in a sincere tone as if he wanted to dig out his own heart, Second uncle, although this nephew has just entered the clan today, but just now, second uncle was full of righteousness for the clan, and your words and actions were full of loyalty and righteousness. I admire you very much. From that moment on, I've already vowed to learn from you and follow your example. I'll wholeheartedly work for the clan. Even if we have to climb a mountain of swords, plunge into a sea of fire, and jump into a pot of boiling oil, we must bring glory to our Chu clan and maintain the purity of our bloodline. He weakly took a few deep breaths before he continued to speak from the bottom of his heart. Second uncle, you see, although I just entered the family today, my father is the family head, and I am naturally the eldest grandson. How heavy is the responsibility on my shoulders? Now that the heavenly layer is surging, people's hearts are unfathomable, and schemes are emerging endlessly. My Chu clan isn't one of the top ruling clans, right? Their position is rather unstable. Everyone wants to annex them, right? What kind of dire situation is this? Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. Such a heavy burden is about to fall on my shoulders. Poor little nephew, how can I bear it? That will require second uncle's assistance. Minister Chu's words were sincere and sincere. His words were full of affection and good intentions. However, everyone had mixed feelings in their hearts. Judging from the way this guy spoke, it seemed like he already considered himself to be the future clan head. He actually said, a heavy burden, small shoulders. Did he say that he wanted you to be the clan head? He actually said, second uncle, you have to assist me. What the heck? After Minister Chu finished speaking, he even added, second uncle, don't you think so? Without waiting for Chu Feilong to reply, Chu Yang had already smoothly continued, second uncle of course has no objections. Anyone with a discerning eye will know that I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart for the good of the clan. Chu Feilong had just opened his mouth, but Chu Yang had already finished speaking. He couldn't help but stare. In front of his father and brother, how could he have the face to argue with his eldest nephew? He could only swallow a mouthful of saliva. Since my position is so important, my responsibility is so heavy. Chu Yang was full of responsibility. he said resolutely, how can I not give it my all? How can I not do it for the sake of the clan? How can I not ensure the purity of the clan's bloodline? Fortunately, this is a heaven-sent opportunity. With the purple crystal jade essence and the bloodline of the Chu clan in it, we'll know whether it's pure or not after a test. Chu Yang chuckled and said with great success, besides, this isn't a troublesome matter. I just need to call my brothers and sisters over and prick them lightly. Everything will be fine. Furthermore, I don't need to break my fingers. I've already pricked them just now. It doesn't hurt at all. From his tone, it seemed that he was very proud of this idea that he had thought of. You've indeed pricked them, but what's your situation? Why should others prick them for no reason? Besides, how is this a simple prick? This is simply a humiliation. A complete humiliation. This matter isn't just a matter of bloodline. It's directly related to the survival of the clan. Chu Yang said sincerely, I know that this matter has offended second uncle, third uncle and fourth uncle. But, seeing that I'm wholeheartedly doing this for the clan, I believe that the few of you won't blame me. Second uncle, why don't you call your brothers over for a test? Everyone will be at ease, right? After going around in circles, Chu Yang had directly raised this matter to the height that Chu Feilong had mentioned just now. In fact, it was even higher than that. Furthermore, all these methods were used by Chu Feilong just now. Now, Minister Chu was using the same method. He was giving Chu Feilong a taste of his own medicine. Furthermore, he made Chu Feilong speechless. Chu Feiyan was sweating profusely at the back. This fellow is a schemer in the lower three heavens? Diwu Qingrou's huge empire was ruined by him in a year's time. At this moment, second brother, you've really met a troublesome person. It's only the first day and he's already in such a mess. Furthermore, he's still lying down and unable to get up. If I wait for him to stand up energetically... Damn it, luckily I didn't offend him. The one who offended him was second brother? Nonsense. I've never lost my son. What's there to test? There's no need to test. Chu Feilong angrily rebuked. What accident happened there? Chu Yang was displeased. Second uncle, you're wrong. When did I say that there was an accident? Everyone was exasperated. When did you say that? You kept saying that there was an accident. Furthermore, just because you've never lost your son doesn't mean that he's your son. What? It's a clan scandal. Let's not talk about it. It's more important to verify his identity. Minister Chu sighed with emotion. Of course, with second uncle's character and charisma, I definitely trust you. However, no matter how good your character is, it's not as good as solid evidence. The most important evidence of our Chu clan's bloodline is the blood of the tongue and the soul of the purple crystal. It's just a small prick. Second uncle, why are you stopping me? Don't tell me, you have ulterior motives? Chu Yang's eyes turned cold. Second uncle, you're stubbornly stopping our Chu clan from verifying his identity. What are you up to? Chu Feilong was so angry that his whole body started to tremble. These words were exactly what he had said to Yang Ruolan just now. He had almost driven Yang Ruolan crazy just now. Now that these words were being said to him, Chu Feilong finally knew what it felt like to be wronged for no reason. His limbs were cold and his chest was about to explode. Chu Yang sighed and said, Second uncle, it's true. Although my brothers aren't lost. But what if... second uncle, it's a small matter for us to raise someone else's son. However, the Chu clan's legacy and the efforts of our ancestors. How can we... it's really hard to say this. As a junior, I'm embarrassed to say this. Old Master Chu Xiongqing's face turned black. You've even said that you're raising someone else's son, and you're still embarrassed to say it? Chu Feiling felt that his son was a little too much. No matter what, I'm still your second uncle before you fall out with him. But you're being accused of being a cuckold. It's a little inappropriate. Therefore he wanted to stop Chu Yang, but Yang Ruolan grabbed him and rolled her eyes. Yang Ruolan was feeling very comfortable after hearing this. She felt that she had never felt so good ever since she was a young lady in her maiden home. Chu Yang's words were better than thousands of horses and thousands of soldiers. Seeing that Chu Feiling wanted to stop Chu Yang, Yang Ruolan was furious. You bastard, you brainless fool. Can't you see that he's standing up for us? I'm feeling very gratified. Why are you stopping me? Evil creatures. No matter how scheming Chu Feilong was, he was still angered by Chu Yang. He couldn't help but roar. Second uncle, you're right. Those with unknown origins are evil creatures. Chu Yang said in agreement, we have to verify their identities. We can't let those evil creatures of unknown origins exist in our Chu clan. Alright, it was just your brothers, but now it's a bunch of evil creatures of unknown origins. Old Master Chu Xiongqing was sitting at one side and had already fainted. Although Old Master Chu had some tricks up his sleeves, he was still a pure warrior in his bones. Everything was direct and efficient. This was his strength. But if he were to be involved in such a conspiracy, it would be better to just cut off his head. Now his eldest grandson and second son were at loggerheads. Old Master Chu couldn't say anything. He couldn't even leave in a huff. He was in a dilemma. You mean, you suspect that your second aunt is unfaithful? Chu Fei Long bent down and looked at Chu Yang dangerously. A junior saying that an elder is unfaithful. This was a taboo in any clan. Chu Fei Long's question was somewhat sinister. When did I ever say such disgraceful words? Chu Yang cried out as if he had been wronged. You shouldn't accuse me like this. I'm only suspecting the origins of those bastards. When did I mention my second aunt? Second uncle, you're slandering me like this. I'm very sad. He paused and suddenly realized something. Second uncle, in order to avoid verifying their identities, you actually used my second aunt's reputation? How can you do this? No matter what, my second aunt has lived with you for so many years. I'm really embarrassed to say this. Chu Fei Long almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Just now, when he knelt down, Chu Fei Ling and Yang Ruolan had no way out. In less than an hour, Chu Yang had left him with no way out with just a few words. Furthermore, he was only making things difficult for Yang Ruolan. But now, what Chu Yang was doing was 10 times more humiliating than before. And he couldn't retaliate. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.